Shush. Shush it. You have to shush.
want a man for president who's seasoned through and through, but not so doggone seasoned that he won't try something new. A man who's old enough to know
and young enough to do.
Well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you.
What is Kennedy, 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 Kennedy for me? Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you want a man with spirit who is not afraid to fight?
A man whose record shows that he will fight for what is right.
A loyal man who'll bring the job a fresh new point of view. Well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you.
Cause it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy for me. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
And do you deny to any man the right he's guaranteed to be elected president, no matter what his creed?
It's promised in the Bill of Rights to which we must be true.
So it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you.
And it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy for me. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you like a man who answers straight, a man who's always fair? We'll measure him against the others, and when you compare, you cast your vote for Kennedy, and the change that's overdue. So it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you.
Yes, it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy for me.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Stop.
Welcome, one and all. This from the Saucon Valley, from my second bedroom. Let me back up. The whole opening just screwed all that up. From my humble second bedroom in the Saucon Valley, part of the Lehigh Valley, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, in these United States, on this planet Earth, the only one we have. Third rock from the sun in the Terran solar system, part of the Milky Way galaxy. This is the Kennedy Effect for 14 February 2021. Happy Valentine's Day, all. Happy Valentine's Day to all. I'm thrilled that you have been able to, or have chosen to, make us and our program part of your Valentine's Day celebrations. Jeff Kennedy with you, flying solo, as producers April and George are enjoying their Valentine's Day. And I have enjoyed mine up to this point. Even though it has been an odd weather weekend here in the Lehigh Valley, we've been waiting, and we keep getting warnings from the weather authorities that this incredible snow icy conglomeration is coming. It just hasn't come yet, so I don't know when that's going to happen. But you know, the sun was out today. It felt warm. There's been some melting snow, and you know, it was a nice day. It was a nice day today. It was a pretty nice day yesterday. A bit colder yesterday, but still nice, gray but dry. Still lots of snow all over the place here. The melting has begun, but you know, hey, it's February, and this is what happens. This is part of winter, and it's just it just is what it is. And so here we are on your Valentine's Day. Let's get through the business end of the program. So this is the Kennedy Effect for Valentine's Day, 14 February 2021. Our guests will be joining us at the bottom of the hour, wherever you might be on Facebook, wherever you may be watching on Facebook. And we are now, again, sharing the program to roughly 80 different locations throughout the Facebook universe, using the tools of the enemy against them. You can continue to watch, listen, enjoy the program exactly where you are. However, as 8 of you, I think, 7, 8, it's been as high as 13 already. It fluctuates throughout the course of the program. If you come to our home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information, That Other Side of Information, you can join the live chat. Say hello. Send me questions, comments, argue with me, agree with me. Send some love on this Valentine's Day. Come over to the live chat. Our home group Facebook page is That Other Side of Information. To our sisters, brothers, friends, family at Hot101.net, welcome, welcome, welcome once again. We are honored to be part of your Sunday evening. On your smart speakers, your whatever device you might be using, phone, tablet, laptop, desktop, smart speaker, if you're streaming us into the car, whatever and however you are consuming Hot101.net, we are just thrilled that you are. All of us here at the Kennedy Effect are absolutely proud and honored and humbled to be part of the Hot101.net family. And that talk family, by the way, will be expanding very, very soon. And we'll be talking about that as we move along. I'm proud to say that too. A group of hosts that, there's Dr. Io and I now, and that will be growing. And some of those hosts were born out of this program. So I'm very, very proud of that. And April will join us, and those hosts will join us as their programs begin to come online. If you don't know how to listen to Hot101.net, it is incredibly easy. Very, very easy. You can go to the main website page, which would be, the web page is right in the name. It's Hot101.net. If you have an Apple device, go to the Apple App Store. You can find the app for Hot101.net. Very, very simple. Tap on it. You're listening. Done. Super simple. If you have not a Google device. I mean, no. Let me try that again because I'm close. I guess that's where the Google part came from. You'll see where my mind got twisted up and where it came from. If you have an Android device, go to the Google Play Store. That's where the Google part snuck in there. And you can download the Android app for your Android phone at the Google Play Store and get Hot101.net and listen that way. Or if you download the TuneIn radio app, you can just search for Hot101.net. You can find us there and listen through TuneIn. Contact the program, right? Easy. I always ask you to contact the program, to interact with us. We love NPR here at the program. I listen to NPR. It is informative. It is unbiased. And it is truth and facts and science, everything that we love here at the Kennedy Effect. However, we don't like to pretend to be NPR. We are not here to lecture you. We want you to be part of the program. So how do you interact with the program? Well, as I mentioned, you can come to the home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information, join the live chat. You can email the program. Our email for all things in the Kennedy Effect universe is thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. You can send questions, comments, again, agree, disagree, scream, show suggestions, guest suggestions, article, anything that you want to email, that is the way to get to it. The Twitter is alive. The Twitter page is open right in front of me right now. You can tweet me directly or DM me for that matter. Right now, well, anytime, of course, but right now, obviously, since we're live on the air is when I will see it and I will read it and I will make it part of the program. You can tweet us, search for That Other Side of Information, and the Twitter handle itself directly is at That Kennedy Talk. Following the live broadcast, the recorded part of the program will be sent to our YouTube channel. We ask you very humbly, but we're quite serious, to go to the YouTube channel. If you missed any part of the program, it is our repository. It is our library for all recorded programs. Give us a subscribe over at YouTube, and then you will be alerted to anything that we upload there. If you could give us a follow on Twitter, we would be thrilled. We're up to a whopping, I'm going to check right now. You hear me clicking. We're up to a whopping 23 followers. My goodness, we almost look like we're not a bot. Isn't that kind of fun? We almost look like we're not some type of Russian troll. So, hey, if you could give us a follow on Twitter, we would appreciate it. You also get some, I tweet some articles over there. I will actually tweet some thoughts and comments occasionally, and you will always get show notices through Twitter. I was joking. Of course, we have the Instagram, that other side of information, and you can find me on LinkedIn at Jeff Kennedy. All that said, I was joking a little earlier today with George that we, I know this is from literature, and I want to say it's from Faust, and I think I'm right, and someone is welcome to please correct me if I am incorrect, but I believe it's Faust that wrote about the 7 levels of hell. Well, we are consistently descending into those. We have Facebook, we have LinkedIn, we have Instagram, we have YouTube, we have Twitter, and we have added yet another level down into the social media dissension. I am now on TikTok. Yep. Let that sink in. Let that sit with you and marinate a little bit. I am now on TikTok. So what do I plan to do on TikTok? Well, occasionally I'll send you a thought, a brief, as we know, there's 60-second videos. We're not broadcasting live on TikTok as of yet. We don't quite have the software for that. But I will put show announcements there. Let you know when the show is going to be on, when to find us, how you can contact us, all that good stuff. It's basically a show announcement, show promotion, to be blunt, type thing. Another thing that I would be remiss if I did not mention, and that would be the Patreon. The Patreon is up, and it is complete, and it is. If you just go to patreon.com, it was Dante's Inferno. Thank you, Liz. I think it might have been Dante's Inferno. I think you might be correct. Thank you so much. Nice of Liz to be with us from the beginning. I'm making fun of my friend Liz there for a second. Nice to be here from the beginning, Liz. You missed all the fun stuff at the beginning. The Patreon is up. It is complete. There are levels of subscription to be a Patreon supporter, and each level has some goodies, some freebies, as it were, that you can get by being a Patreon subscriber, and we would be thrilled if you did. That said, the interesting thing about Patreon, you might be thinking to yourself, well, he's just, asking us for money and whatnot. No, well, yes and no. I mean, yeah, I kind of am asking for money, but I can only offer you my genuine, sincere truth in information that money that comes into the Patreon account, especially since we do not have any advertisers as of now, money that comes into the Patreon account will be used for the betterment and the expansion and the production quality expansion of this program. I am not putting that money in my pocket. It will be used entirely, 100% for this program, for either technology upgrades, a microphone upgrade, maybe a better headset, expanding, George and I, of course, have a plan to build out this second bedroom as much more of a studio, TV quality as well as radio quality. So we're not going to, I'm not looking to make a mint off of you. This is not a GoFundMe. I'm not going to stick it in my pocket and run away to a Caribbean island. It is to turn the money back into the program. So I hope you will visit patreon.com. Search for that other side of information. You'll find everything there. That includes some private content. I can do a Zoom with you, personal appearances, some writings, and so you'll see everything there. on the Patreon. So there's that as well. And of course, later in the program, we will be opening the phone line. So you can contact us, you can call us and be part of the program. We do have guests coming in. They're supposed to be here around the bottom of the hour. But I want to get to something now that all of that, the business bit is out of the way. Let me get to you might hear me sniffling a little bit. I am very stuffed up and kind of a little runny today. I'm not ill, I do not believe, but something seems to have changed in the air where I'm very stuffed up. Bit of a runny nose, which is, not on camera for you, thank goodness. And it's just I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's the changing weather or how cold it was this week here in the Lehigh Valley. We have had a lot of frozen precipitation. I'm not sure. I don't think it's cold though. But so if you hear me sniffling, I deeply apologize. It's not the most attractive thing in the world to hear me sniffle. I'm sniffling yet again. Here I go yet again. Let me just do this very quick so no one has to see it. That is tissue. That's pretty not fun, isn't it? That said, so let me get into some initial thoughts that I want to share with you before our guests arrive. Anything happening in the news this week? Anything big going on that anybody knows about? Anything happening in the Senate? Well, of course, this week was impeachment week. And if you are a regular listener, watcher, viewer, contributor to the program, you will know that I am a unabashed, I was going to say flaming, which would be probably isn't funny. If I find it funny, I hope it doesn't bother anybody else. I'm a progressive. I'm a New Deal Democrat. I'm a Kennedy Democrat. Obviously, you can see my name on the screen. I, of course, still think, believe to my core that not only is the former occupant of the White House, and doesn't that sound nice to say, is guilty of sedition, treason, and inciting an effort to overthrow the American government. Because let's not just call it incitement to riot or incitement of sedition. Let's call it exactly what it was. It was an incitement of a coup attempt. C-O-U-P, the French word. It was an incitement of a coup. It was an attempt to overthrow the nearly 240-year-old constitutional democratic republic, small d, small r, that the United States is. It was an attempt to end the American experiment by one man and the sycophants around him, in his family and out, to literally finish the fascist transition that is happening and has been happening in this nation since 1981. So that's what that was. And I obviously believe that he was guilty. I have felt that way since January 6th itself. And I believe those that aided him are guilty and need to quite literally be expelled from their seats in government. Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, Mo Brooks, the 140 something House members that voted to overturn the legal and certified results of the election, of the presidential election. Of course, only overturn those results in black areas. Let's just be blunt. They didn't want to investigate the vote totals in places like Orange County, California, or Wyoming, or Idaho, or the Dakotas. Those were all okay. But Detroit, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Yeah, those we had a look at. So not only do I believe that the president, the former president, and I rarely even call him that, not only do I believe he was guilty, I believe all of his sycophants are currently living, existing guilty. That said, what is this really about? What is this so-called acquittal really about? If you saw any of the show announcements that I put out across Facebook or even on TikTok now, you will know that the question I've asked you is, what does the quote-unquote acquittal mean for Republicans, and what does it mean for the United States? Well, let us try to answer that question. And I do very much hope for those of you that are watching that consider yourselves to be self-identified Republicans, I hope you're listening. Because you're not, by the way, but we've talked about that a lot. So what does it mean for Republicans, and what does it mean for our nation? What was this really about? What was this coup attempt about? What is the continuing Trump support, sycophancy, cult following? What is it about? What's the real depth of what we're talking about? What is the real roots of what we're talking about? As I see it, it is the following. What this so-called acquittal shows us is that there is indeed a splintering of what used to be the Republican Party. It is a corporation now. And it also shows three things. It shows you that the members of the Republican Corporation are, in fact, so beholden to the huge corporations, the billionaire class, the top 1%, that they are willing to overlook treason, willing to overlook a coup attempt in order to all keep their seats. What this so-called acquittal has done, what it has set up, and this is what the real crux of it is, and I want your responses. I want your phone calls, I want your emails, get in the live chat, tweet us, tell me what you think of this, of my explanation. The real roots of this acquittal, the real setup of it, the real justification for it in the eyes of Republicans is not for now. It's not to sweep these treasonous actions under the rug and try to separate themselves from Trump. It's none of that. It's not to try to make it go away, because it can't and it won't. You don't have a coup attempt every day in this country, folks. So this is not going to go away. This coup attempt is still underway. It might be much more quiet. It may have slowed in its momentum. Some of the groups behind it may have gone undercover for now, but it has not gone away. So what is it about? And again, I want you to tell me if you agree. Email me, tweet me, go in the live chat, send a comment, or phone the program. I believe what this acquittal was about was paving the way for a more competent fascist yet to come. You know, the easiest way to continue to redirect billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars, how to redistribute that money from the bottom 99% up to the top 1% is to not really have to deal with the legislative process. Why have to deal with those pesky people in Congress if we just kill enough of them that the occupant of the White House can declare himself leader for life? That's what the point of January 6th was. Trump sent those people there to kill as many members of Congress, especially Democratic ones, as possible, and to wipe out the federal line of succession. Kill Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence, put a bullet in Nancy Pelosi's face, hunting for Chuck Schumer, hunting for the president pro tem of the Senate. The goal was to wipe out the constitutional line of succession, leaving a decimated and empty legislative branch and no line of succession. That was the goal. But we know it didn't work. We somehow emerged from January 6th. So what was the point of the acquittal? The acquittal was meant to, and has done to an extent, justified that coup attempt. It's made it okay. No problem. It was not, the whole thing was unconstitutional. He shouldn't be tried for this. What he did wasn't that bad. Or some members of the Senate saying what he did, he didn't even do what he was charged of. The goal is to pave the way for the more competent fascists to come. And we already know who some of those more competent fascists are. I have mentioned on this program a lot that we are in this nation, partly because of cable news, to be honest, and the entertainment value that has, and the sports, the sort of competition, the sports-like competition that we have brought to our elections. We've turned them into a sporting event. And it's because of cable news, I think, that we've done that to an extent, because elections draw eyeballs to screens. They draw people to click. They help you buy subscriptions at websites and what's left of newspapers, I guess, and magazines and so on. So this horse race is always going on. This competition is always going on. And you already know who some of the more competent fascists are to emerge, and they're already running for president in 2024. Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, Nikki Haley, Mike Pence, Matt Gaetz, possibly Jim Jordan, Gymnasium Jim Jordan. They're already running for president. So when the media tries to tell you that their sign-off, their acceptance of the Trump behavior is to simply keep his base, it's not only that. It is yet another layer in the foundation of the degradation, if not the ending, of this constitutional democratic republic. What if Tom Cotton is the Republican nominee in 4 years and he loses an election to Kamala Harris? Tom Cotton's a far more competent fascist than Donald Trump. In fact, he might even have even more billionaire money behind him. We have laid the groundwork for a Tom Cotton to stand up and say, attack the Capitol. The election was stolen from you. And now we've made all those actions, not even those high crimes and misdemeanors. This acquittal makes those high crimes not high crimes anymore. Make no doubt about it, they are high crimes and misdemeanors, but this Republican-only acquittal has made these seditious, treasonous, coup attempt actions, made it all okay. And if you don't think that this can't happen again, then you are truly missing the point. Because not only can it happen again, it will. And it will do it possibly as early as 4 years from now, or maybe even 2 years from now, at the congressional election time, when the constant drumbeat of this election was stolen from you continues and continues and continues. So that said, and by the way, nearly 200 pieces of legislation at the state level have been introduced across the country by Republicans to suppress, limit, tamp down the vote, the open vote. Republicans here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania who originally agreed to unlimited mail-in voting, well, we need to stop that now. Now they want to stop it because they lost Pennsylvania. Funny, on a ballot with so many elections on it, it's only the presidential election they have a problem with. The same ballots that voted them into the state legislature and actually increased their numbers, largely due to the incompetency of the Democratic Party here in the Commonwealth. Those elections were okay. But boy, that presidential election, something was wrong with that. Folks, I truly do not believe that you are all that stupid. And yeah, I said stupid. I really, and I mean it. Stupid. I don't think you're that stupid. I hope you're not. And quite frankly, if you are, that's why we have this program, to hopefully make you a little bit less. That's what this was about this week. That's what this impeachment, so-called acquittal, was about. It was about normalizing treasonous behavior. It was about normalizing a coup attempt, which is still ongoing. A coup attempt that was purposefully planned and designed to end our constitutional, small d democratic, small r republic. And all the while that this impeachment trial was going on this week, what was happening? Billionaires continue to rob you blind. New articles this week show that I've mentioned to you before that we've created 4 new billionaires in the United States since the beginning of the pandemic, 1 right here in Pennsylvania. And that the total wealth of the 660-ish billionaires that we have in the United States. We far outpace every other country. They've increased their net worth by roughly $1.4 trillion just since March. Less than a year. That's what we're talking about. And boy, wouldn't it be easy to continue that massive, massive wealth redistribution if there was no pesky Congress to get in the way. If the executive simply had all the power. Folks, that's what happened this week. Let me be plain. That's what happened this week. It was completely an attempt to normalize seditious, treasonous, and a coup attempt. What happens to the United States when in 4 years from now, a more competent fascist runs for the presidency? What happens then? I urge you all, let me give you the phone number, contact. It's too late for the Senate to make a different decision. That vote has taken place. If you're in a red state with 2 Republican senators, that decision's been made. But that doesn't mean that you cannot have your voice be heard. And I encourage you all to do it. We're going to continue to put the number, give the number to you. If I had a graphic for it, I would put it up. George isn't with me today, so I'm going to be struggling for graphics. The congressional switchboard is 202-225-3121 for the House and 202-224-3121 for the Senate. Call your representatives. Tell them that what they did in and of itself was seditious and treasonous, and that coup attempts cannot be normalized as regular behavior, because that's what happened yesterday. Yes, it's that serious. And to be honest, yes, it's that simple. That's what happened yesterday. 5:39 Eastern Time in the Eastern Time Zone, Eastern Standard Time. We didn't get to daylight savings coming quick here in the Saucon Valley, part of the Lehigh Valley in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, part of these United States on this planet Earth, third rock from the sun in the Terran solar system. This is the Kennedy Effect for Valentine's Day, 14 February 2021. One of our guests is here. Let's reset the program. Wherever you are on Facebook, across the nearly 80 locations that we send the program, groups, national pages, private groups, public groups, personal pages. Thank you all for being with us. Wherever you are watching and listening, we thank you. You can stay right where you are or come to our home group Facebook page, that other side of information. Join the chat. Send me a question. Send me a comment. Yell at me. Agree with me. Disagree with me. Whatever you'd like. The live chat is open. And I want to stress, wherever you may fall on the political spectrum. As you know, we have had Republican guests on this program, and they are just as welcome as anyone. Your personal opinions and political views are respected. I may not agree with them, and I will I will definitely try to convince you differently. But you are respected here. So you are welcome here, and we thank you. To our sisters, brothers, friends, family at Hot101.net, thank you again for allowing us onto your smart speakers, your devices in your cars, however you consume Hot101.net. We thank you for allowing us to be part of yet another one of your Sundays. If you do not know how to listen to Hot101.net, it's very easy. Go to the main website page, Hot101.net. You can download the Hot101.net app both for Apple and Android. Just go to the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. And if you have the TuneIn Radio app, you can just search for Hot101.net. You can contact this program. Email us, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. Again, questions, comments, yell, scream, agree, disagree, show suggestions, guest suggestions, anything you wish, you can email us, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. You can live tweet the program. The Twitter is open. It's in front of me right now. Our Twitter handle is @ThatKennedyTalk, @ThatKennedyTalk, or just search for That Other Side of Information. And we will be opening the phone line later in the program after we have a chance to meet and commiserate with our guest. I believe that is the Patreon. Please visit patreon.com /, That Other Side of Information. You will see all of our subscription levels there. And you can be part of this, supporting this program, and all monies. And I'm not kidding you. Every damn dime that we are fortunate, honored enough to raise through Patreon will be turned immediately back into the program. Not for profit, not sticking it in my pocket, not running away to a warm and tropical place. We will reinvest in this program. Technology, build out the studio, cameras, the whole 9 yards. What am I missing? We will open up the phone line. I said that. If you miss any part of the program, after the program is done, we send the recorded version to our YouTube channel, also called That Other Side of Information. Give us a subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter, join the Facebook group, That Other Side of Information. Listen, there's no way you cannot be part of the Kennedy Effect universe, and we want you to be part of that universe, wherever you fall on the political spectrum. So after that big, long diatribe, let me get to my guest, who is feverishly swigging water. I don't know if he went out for a jog or whatever. We're fixing hair, we're swigging water. Everything's happening right now.
Yeah.
Let me welcome in my guest. I will allow him to introduce himself and explain to you exactly what he does. I was fortunate. I don't want to say we because I won't speak for him. I was fortunate enough to make his acquaintance last Wednesday. We are fortunate enough. Let me find some wood to hit it off and find out that we have an awful lot in common. And I wanted to bring him onto the program to explain the work that he and his group are doing. And with that said, our guest is Paolo Cremidis. Paolo, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate you having us on here. Should I just go now?
Well, I'm gonna, as folks know, I break the fourth wall in this program a lot. We speak directly to the audience. We don't hide anything here. So Paolo and I were lucky enough. We had a chance to speak via phone earlier in the week and get set up for the program. Let him know, how the program works and how it's going to operate, and that we are actually going to open a phone line. We do take questions, comments, all that fun stuff. And by the way, folks at home, my dear beloved audience, you do know how the phone works. You can pick it up and call us. Don't be afraid. It's okay. We've had callers before and they all escape unbloodied. So please feel free to do so. I will put up the phone line a bit later in the program. So Paolo, we will start exactly the way I warned you we were going to start. Who is Paolo Cremidis and how did you get here?
So I'm 29. I'm from upstate New York. And I do a lot of work in being able to mobilize people to run for local office across rural communities. And how I ended up getting here is my group that we launched our group that we launched 2 months ago. It was me, myself, 5 local Democratic elected officials and partners from Run for Something and Working Families Party. We decided to have a conversation about what's working and what's not working post 2020. And what seemed to work is that, there's a lot of funding out there for candidates. There's a lot of ways for candidates to be able to get funding and run for office.
And certainly no limit on it.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Which is a different topic that we might get to in the course of this conversation. But it's there. But when you say there's a lot of money out there, there is a lot of money out there because it is completely unlimited.
And we ended up taking like a big look at where money was going and where capacity building was going within the party, right? And
within which party?
The Democratic Party, and within progressive spaces, right? And progressive organizations, right?
Just throwing that in there because we didn't mention that, but we glossed
sure.
right over that. This is it's progressives and Democrats that you work with exclusively, if I'm not mistaken.
It's mostly in the rural
areas. So this is an effort that you have undertaken, created, built, to re-establish Democratic office holders
in rural
progressive and democratic principles in rural areas where, as we mentioned, that unlimited Republican money has turned the areas red and convinced huge swaths of not just your state, not just my state, but this entire nation to continually vote against its own self-interest.
And it's created a status quo that isn't built upon like real engagement, right? Like if I was looking at some data, well, let me go back to the group's called Outrun, right? We were founded 2 months ago. Our name comes from, the idea that like rural Democratic and progressive candidates have for decades now have had to outrun the top of the ticket to win election, right? And with that name, we built this idea around like, helping local campaigns build capacity, build structure, figure out what things like win numbers are, figure out, how to get involved with like larger organizations, how to kind of get inspired and look at candidate recruitment as more than just like, we need to fill this slot or this person doesn't have enough experience to run for this, right? How to overcome those barriers, right? Within rural communities. And so we decided to launch this group. We've spoken, at I think 10 counties now. And we're about to do our first event outside of New York State. We're based in upstate New York. I used to be a state party officer in the state Democratic Party. I got burned out. I did not like it. There was a lot of structural issues within the party that we could not actually fight. So one thing that we did was just said, let's just start our own organization. And we did that. And so instead of having to deal with, the factionalism sometimes in the Democratic Party can create a problematic understanding around local office. And the one thing that we notice is everyone wants to run for state legislature. Everyone wants to run for Congress. Everybody thinks they're ready to run for Senate. Nobody wants to run for commissioner. Nobody wants to run for mayor or borough council, right? In Pennsylvania specifically, or city council or county legislature or county executive, right? And those are big races that, folks can come out of and actually win.
And meaningful. I know that part of what you do is, host's privilege. I'm going to
for sure.
But one of the things that you and I had the opportunity to talk about is the education part of what you do. It's part of what I do here on this program. It's part of what Blue Collective does. It's part of what the Democratic Party should do a hell of a lot more of is education. It's the presidency and the U.S. Senate and House races that tend to get all the pub and all the press. But it's the day-to-day operation of the neighborhood that you live in is at the local level. And perhaps even more than that, you certainly don't have to agree with me, but perhaps you do, and we can talk about that's part of it too, in the concept, in the collection of what you do. It's the county governments. I think people don't realize how much the county governments affect literally their day-to-day lives.
Yeah, and also how much being in a county position can give you a bully pulpit to be able to kind of play politics at the state or federal level.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like there are county executives in New York State that are able to kind of mobilize their Congress members to do things, whether it's for their donors or for their communities. Sometimes you can't tell, right? And so it's interesting to see that sort of like network of power, right? And so the question that we came to is, how do we break it? And we break it by making sure that in places where the Democratic Party seems to unintentionally also uphold, the structures of the Republican Party by making sure that Republicans, sometimes are unopposed, right? That we are able to kind of make sure that these local progressive and democratic organizations learn things like looking at candidate recruitment is more than just looking at people who are doctors and lawyers to be able to run for office. Being able to kind of like ensure that new generations of people are allowed to run for office, right? That we actually start talking about racism within the structure of the Democratic Party, as it tends to talk about in rural communities, right? That's a big issue that a lot of people don't want to talk about, is that, in a lot of parts within, the predominantly age of like the average county Democratic committee member in a rural community is like 50, 60 years old, right?
Mhm.
However, in those same communities, this is something I noticed. I went to Panera today. No advertisement. I went to Panera today, and then I went to Starbucks because Panera had a long line. And these are two little coffee shops in Chemung County. Chemung County voted 42% for Joe Biden, 58% for Donald Trump, right? It is a place where, outside of the main city of Elmira and the town of Elmira, you are in Republican territory. But the variation of how Republican it is interesting because it changes, right? And I was in this store, and the one thing that I hear in a lot of these counties, like, there are no young people to organize. There's no way that we can organize young people, or the only young people we can organize are college students, right? And I went to this Starbucks, right? And it was interesting that I went in there and I saw just millennials, just young people working the register, working as management, being able to kind of like run a business, right? And I saw this twice. I saw this at the Starbucks and I saw this at the Panera. And what this showed to me is that there are young people in these communities and that they're not being asked to participate in a level that they should be, right? That sometimes the Democratic Party can be difficult in being able to make that happen. And they don't think of these things as like a way of recruitment, right? I'm not saying go up to your local Panera or Starbucks and ask the kids.
Especially when the Republican corporation is not reaching out to them at all.
Yeah.
And in fact, working feverishly to disenfranchise them.
Exactly. And so I went to the Starbucks and I went to this Panera today, and I just thought it was interesting that there were so many young people. And like, I'm 29, so I'm not like young, but like, I saw kids in their 90s.
Son, I'm going to be 52. You're young.
Kids in their young 20s, right? And young people who, and I think that this is like a good argument about how badly the misallocation of labor in America has happened and what a bad hand it has dealt millennials. I'd be willing to wager that a lot of those folks are college educated and just can't find local jobs that are sustainable. And so they end up working in places like Panera and Starbucks, and then they're not asked to enfranchise politically. They're not asked to join Democratic parties. They're not asked to get involved, right? It's not fun to do that because you're being told what to do, right? So we're in a place where kids like that exist in rural communities, and we need to be able to mobilize them. And unfortunately, progressive spaces and Democratic spaces in rural areas tend to not be able to do that. They tend to not be able to enfranchise young people as more than just the help or, help me with my technology, right? And those are two places where the party needs to do better and progressive spaces need to do better. So Outrun was founded to do two things: include diversity in candidate recruitment across rural communities. We teach county Democratic parties and progressive groups to do that. We've done it in 10 counties so far. And, we're going to do 2 in Pennsylvania. I just want to look at one statistic at stuff that we talked about. We have done recruitment of 25 town council candidates, 2 county sheriffs, 10 town supervisors, and now I think 4 county legislators. There was an event that we did in Orange County, which is like outside of New York City, which is like, if you know New York City, like, it's like the Staten Island of the Hudson Valley, right? It's like a lot of cops and stuff like that.
Orange is right above Rockland?
Yes.
So folks, if you're at home, you can picture in your brains, or if you want to Google it quickly or DuckDuckGo it quickly, a map of New York. You generally, New York State, I think we all generally know where New York City is, and Long Island. The 2 counties immediately above are Rockland and Westchester. Orange is immediately north of Rockland.
Yeah, and next to Putnam. And it was interesting, right? One of the folks that I pitched Outrun to was this town Democratic chair named Fahim Haider. When I thought that was an interesting kind of demographic shift of how the party might have been organizing there, because I could tell you somebody like named Paolo Cremidis and somebody named Fahim Haider, maybe 15 years ago wouldn't have been talking about rural organizing, right? Right. So that in itself is interesting. But we did an event in his Democratic town board, his Democratic town committee meeting. And yeah, we had a bunch of folks, old guard folks, older folks who had been there forever. We had a bunch of younger folks. And we did a panel with 5 local Democratic elected officials. And I'm sorry that Delvin can't be here. He hurt his back, unfortunately. Hopefully, he'll be fine though. It was interesting, we had a discussion. We had 5 local Democratic elected officials talk about, what it was like to run for office as a diverse young person in these rural communities and the barriers that they had to overcome both within the party and externally, right? Whether we're talking about, sexism, racism, homophobia and stuff, and how they all still got elected in unseated Republican incumbents, right? And the point of our panels are to show that this can be done, because people will tell us, it can't be done again and again and again. And these young people that we were able to help get elected to office prove that that's wrong, that with actual organizing and actual support and being able to actually run a coherent campaign, that folks can get elected in these communities and do get elected in these communities, right? And in my previous life, when I was a state party officer through the Young Dems, we did this through,
it's just the way it comes out. I think I find it.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. It's the way it came out. That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So in your previous existence prior to politics.
Yeah. We recruited 85 young people to run across the 47 upstate counties of New York State. No, more than 85, but 85 got elected, right? And 85 of those people are now sitting county commissioners. Some of them the only Democrat on their county boards, right? Or the only Democratic elected officials in their village or something like that, right? And they're 19, 27, 22, 35, right? They're all different ages of youth, right? And we realized that we want to replicate this, right? And so that's kind of why I reached out to United Rural Democrats of Pennsylvania. And I went to their event with Our Revolution. And that's how I met you. And that's how I ended up talking here. And we want to be able to kind of show that we can democratize the process for folks to run for office. And that we need progressive and democratic folks to run for local office, because unopposed Republican incumbents is honestly kind of like, from your starting monologue, I don't have the statistic on the top of my head, but some of those Republican senators were local elected officials in states that had elected Democrats back in the day, that had just risen through the ranks. And then, when the wave years happened, they were able to pull the trigger and get elected. You know what I mean? And so we want to be able to make sure that folks are running for local office and that they're equipped properly, right? And that they're not, having these like barriers put up against them that are at best artificial. I like to point out the thing that, like, counties can be Republican, right? But if we were trying to look at how Republican a county can be or how Democratic a county can be, right? In some of these counties in rural Pennsylvania, by definition, if we're going to talk about the county turnout and stuff like that, even if Democrats get 35% of the vote or 30% of the vote, that means that 30% of the local elected officials should be Democrats, right?
Right.
We should be able to, and then we should be able to kind of like win that spread and be able to kind of like mobilize around that, right? And that doesn't happen. And so we like to teach folks how to be able to overcome barriers, how to ensure that they, that they're actually being led on a proper path, because, oftentimes folks run for office, and this, Jeff, folks run for office and like, yeah, I want to run, I want to do this. Okay, I set up my social media, I'm done. All right, I will see you on election day, right? And they're not given the capacity to understand that they need campaign plans or that they need to actually invest money in things like Van. And how do you do that? How do you fundraise? So we work with partners. We work to connect folks to different organizations that have like free tools on their websites that show them how to do that and stuff. And so that's where the idea of Outrun came from. It's a mentorship program, and it's also kind of like a capacity generator, right? To be able to build capacity in these areas. So, yeah.
So, well, before I ask you, before we get into the, the fun questioning bit, let me just reset again. We're at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. already. The first hour of the program is in the books. Yet another hour headed off to the Radio Hall of Fame. This is the Kennedy Effect for 14 February 2021. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Here to bring you lots of love from the Kennedy Effect, from all of us here. We hope you had a happy Valentine's Day, sugar, spice, and everything nice, chocolate, coffees, all that fun, flowers, all those fun things. We hope you enjoyed your Valentine's Day, and we thank you so much for making us part of yet another Sunday and this Valentine's Day. The home group Facebook page is That Other Side of Information. Come on over to the live chat. We've been anywhere from 3 to 15 people tonight. Comments, questions, say something in the live chat. I will, of course, say hello to you and welcome you as well. If you are watching at the Facebook page for the Lehigh Valley Young Democrats, progressive politics in Pennsylvania, Democrats, Progressive Democrats for America. Who else am I thinking? Hot101.net, of course. I Thrive Community, where any of the 80 places that we share the program across Facebook, stay there, enjoy it, relax, no clicking, moving around needed. But if you would like to come over and join the live chat, please do That Other Side of Information on Facebook. Comments, questions, yell, scream, agree, disagree. Send me flowers. Send me chocolate. Send me fish and chips. It is Valentine's Day after all. Send me good stuff. Come on over, join the chat. Twitter is open. You can live tweet the program at That Kennedy Talk is the handle, or just search That Other Side of Information. Email the program, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. Again, questions, comments, yell, scream, join, agree, disagree, show suggestions, anything like that. I will be putting the phone number on the screen shortly. The Patreon page is alive, full, complete. Learn how you can be a Patreon supporter of the program. All of that money will be turned back into the program, not into my pocket to go to Mexico and never return, but into the program. Also, all of the platforms that we are on, Twitter, YouTube, That Other Side of Information, Instagram. I went on Tick-Tock today.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just... okay, so any of those platforms, please give us a like, a follow, a subscribe, whatever the appropriate thing is for that particular platform. It's how we grow the program. It's how we grow this movement. It's how we continue our discussions. We get great guests like Paolo, and we talk to you every single week. And hopefully we will get to a point where we talk to you 5 days a week. So give us a like, a follow, a subscribe, or whatever is appropriate for each additional platform. Just please join us here on the Kennedy Effect, and you're with us yet again. It is the 14th of February, Valentine's Day. So Paolo.
Yes, I'm here.
What is I guess it's a semi-intentionally wide open question, to get us started before we drill down into the different areas. A lot of the areas that you work in and that I work in were not traditionally, prior to the late 70s and then the onset of the Reagan era, Reaganism, and the Buckley decision, the Bilotti decision, and eventually the Citizens United decision, from which the Supreme Court made law out of thin air and made corporations people and made, unsolicited bribery of officials legal and even constitutional. I don't think they are, but that's what those decisions did. The areas that you work in and the areas that I work in were never traditionally Republican.
Yeah.
Because most people in those areas understood that it was Republicans that favored rich people, big corporations, redistribution of wealth to the top. They were anti-union, et cetera, et cetera. Not are, but we're speaking from a historical point of view. Where do you think the Democratic Party has either lost its messaging, lost its contact with these areas, that let these areas turn deep red? Is it all the cult of Reaganism and he was photogenic and he really knew how to talk on camera? Is it the unlimited amounts of money that the billionaire class can now spend? Is it the right-wing hate media machine drilling into these folks 24/7? Fox News is free on most cable systems, if not all cable systems across the nation, where some places in this country you still have to pay an additional subscription for CNN and MSNBC, let alone free speech TV.
Yeah.
What do you think if we look back a little bit as you and I continue to talk, and we'll move forward through the timeline? We know who you are now, what you do, what we're trying to achieve, and you and I are trying to achieve the same things through different methods. But where did it go wrong? Where did it go off the rails? Where did the folks that live in these areas change their manner of thinking to think to themselves that the New Deal, which saved most of their lives, was no longer the path that this nation needed to take?
So, first things first, before we jump into here, I want to say that all opinions are mine and my own, representing employers or anything like that. And they don't represent everyone's thoughts in the Outrun Coalition, because we are willing to help anyone run for office and stuff. But, within the progressive mindset and stuff, we always have values. Right. I wouldn't say it's as much as people changed their thinking as the New Deal Coalition, starting in 2000, I would say 2008, right? 2008 was a year that, a lot of Democrats talk about, was the benchmark year for the Democratic Party, right? In organizing and stuff. You would have unopposed Democratic incumbents, we controlled 3 out of 4 districts in Mississippi. The Senate races in Idaho were competitive. We won congressional races across the country and stuff. The Senate had a rural outreach chair. The Senate Democrats had a rural outreach chair in Blanche Lincoln, right? Regardless of what you think of her, right? And she ended up losing in 2010, right? There was an interesting moment, and people talk about complacency and stuff, and I liked talking about complacency, but there's also an interesting moment in where people actually kind of created a lack of investment, because they thought that we had already won, and that things would change and dramatically reverse back into a conversation of that people would continuously not need to be organized because Barack Obama was so great, and that everything was so great. And I love President Obama, right? I love him a lot, but there was a moment where folks thought that, everything was going to be fine, and going forward, that there was a new coalition in place that could help keep a sort of New Deal-esque politics abound, right? Mm-hmm. The problem was that a large part of that coalition, which is, honestly kind of sad, was who lived through the New Deal, right? And for the last 10 years, that part of the coalition has been unfortunately passing away, right? Because of old age and stuff, right? I like to hear. I find the saying that's very interesting is the children of Kennedy Democrats are Trump Republicans, right? And that's very true in places like West Virginia, and Pennsylvania, and across the country, right? And so I think that it's not so much as the right-wing media does feed into these communities and stuff, and the right-wing media feeds into everywhere, though, right? There are, right, you can get Fox News for free in Manhattan. You can get Fox News for free in Brooklyn, right? One of the things that is interesting is that I think that the party kind of created a problem around investment, right? And there wasn't a real clear line of investment as an organization, right? And there's been some work around that, but it hasn't really moved back to what it was. A lot of the Democratic parties in the South, for example, right? And this, back in the day, I would say Democrats had supermajorities in the Alabama state legislature, in the Mississippi state legislature.
When they were still a segregationist party, especially.
No. 2010.
That's why I'm interested. Yeah. I'm interested that your take on this begins as late as 2008.
Yeah.
My take on this begins in the 60s.
Yeah.
When Johnson actually used a majority of Republicans to pass the Great Society, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act. And it was the Southern Dixiecrats who were still segregationists to an extent, not all, but a decent number that fought it.
Yeah. But
and as those folks stopped being segregationists and the Democratic Party became the party of civil rights, equal rights, women's rights, voting rights, all across the way, Republicans needed to build that coalition again, so they went after the white racists in the South.
Well,
so for me, that's where I'm just, and my comment is not necessarily to disagree with you. It is that I find it interesting that your take, your feeling that these rural areas that we're addressing have gone so deep red as late as 2010, when I take it back, when the Koch effort, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce effort, ALEC actually goes back to the 70s, the Paul Weyrich ideal of the less people vote, the better we do. That goes back to the late 70s, and especially the onset of Reaganism. So I'm surprised that that's when, and you have to admire, let me just add this in it because I think you'll agree with me on this as well. As despicable as it is, you have to admire the Koch brothers, although one has passed, spending their money so efficiently, taking a business point of view and saying, well, we could spend $100 million to try to flip California red, or we can spend $50,000 in Wyoming.
Yeah.
And Iowa and Montana and the two Dakotas and Idaho and Arkansas, because they're cheaper and they have two senators just like California. So I'm just, again, I'm not necessarily, I guess I'm kind of agreeing with you, but certainly not in any belligerent way. It just, I find it odd that you would consider the real, where the Democratic Party from its New Deal roots lost middle America and lost rural America is as late as 2010. I see it as the late 60s into the 70s. And then especially, of course, on steroids with the onset of Reaganism.
So, the reason why I kind of look at it that way is it's an interesting perspective of like looking at like the dynamics of America, right? So I love like studying the history of rural organizing and like the history of like the rural communities in the Democratic Party. It's like something that I like to do, right? And so this may not be considered history, right? But what I find interesting is that like, we have different levels of like understanding structural racism in America, right? And different levels of coalition building around that. And that's where a lot of this dysfunction started, right? Like, for example, Mississippi decriminalized marijuana before New York State did. Iowa legalized marriage equality before New Jersey, right? Mississippi had a black majority leader of its state house for over 2 decades. Georgia had a Democratic African-American attorney general going into 2010, right? I think that our understanding of what is happening in society and what we look at is, first of all, who was being asked to run in those eras, right? And I'll be honest with you, Jeff. Like, if we were running for like, Chemung County Legislature or Northampton County County Commission or something like that, and we presented, 15 years ago, there was choice between 2 candidates in Democratic primary, committee would probably endorse you because they probably think that you're more, you're someone that and I'm going to put it nicely, that you're somebody that could probably relate to the community better. Whereas I'm an immigrant foreigner, the name Paolo Cremidis, right? And so who was being asked to run in those times, right? It wasn't folks who were going, moving into these communities and demographically creating a different shift, right? Because that's the other thing that people talk about, right? Like, forever the Democratic Party was saying like Latinos are going to save us and young people are going to save us, right? And unfortunately that hasn't happened. Why? Because you can't just say vote for this and then just think that people are just going to vote for that. It doesn't work that way, right? Like I think that one of the most interesting things, for why I think 2010 was like an interesting point is that a lot of the places where we thought we could compete again ended up just going further and further right, to the point that you had counties that have 70% Democratic voter registration, represented by far right people, right? And you could say, yeah, those are people who, were, they're just Dixiecrats, right? Or whatever, right? But the party and the tradition of registering for the Democratic Party, even in the South and stuff like that, yeah, there might be some conversation about Dixiecratism and stuff like that, but it also, we are leaving out a large portion of us being able to understand why people still did that. And that, I think, has to do with your point about the New Deal. If you go to like Rocket City in Alabama and stuff, right? Those scientists might not be around anymore, right? But they love their Democratic member of Congress. And why did they love their Democratic member of Congress? Because the New Deal helped them establish a rocket program in that part of Alabama, right? And the Democratic congressman from that area was able to do that. And up until 2010, right, that area, they might have loved John McCain or whatever, and they're hyper Republican now, but they're still going to have they're going to have their Democratic congressman that they trust, because that's the person who, that they were able to kind of like maybe trust down ballot because it's one of them, right? And so, let me just one more point here, right? The idea of like people having this identity, like notion of like that person being one of them and that becoming such a partisan thing is what we're trying to dismantle, right? Because somebody being one of them or something, like, I'll give you an example, right? I went to Applebee's the other day. I ran into a Republican town supervisor, and he was like, "You're a good kid," because he saw me speak, right? And I'd vote for you, right? And I thought that was interesting because the guy was a Republican. He supported a Republican congressman, Trumper and stuff like that. And the guy, was cool with me and was like, we were talking about like, what it would be like to like run for Congress and stuff like that. And the fact that I was able to establish that trust, the big thing about that, like, it has a lot to do with identity. I think people recognize people who have overcome struggle. Not with the president, obviously, right? Because a lot of these folks ended up voting for him. But if you can make that relational connection, you can undo and unravel a lot of the structures of racism and stuff, and a lot of like the nasty, disgusting right-wing things that are being thrown out there to tell you that, kids like me shouldn't be in Chemung County or Northampton County, right? And that we can't run in these communities. And we have to be able to confront that head on. And that's why I think that 2010, we were just like, we'll win. We might lose a couple seats, but we'll still win, right? And that's why I think that year is like very important to think about,
Let me back up a little bit. Let me back up a little bit again. Where does the corporate... Let me back up. I'm doing a lot of backing up today. You're going to put a signal on me soon if I keep backing up.
Beep.
Yeah, exactly. Let me ask the question this way. Let me preface it, I guess, this way. I have said on this program a lot that the roots, the history of the Democratic Party are not the current people who run it.
Yeah.
It is not the corporate wing of the party. We've given a little bit of latitude here to the Clinton wing because Reagan did a very thorough and masterful job of destroying unions.
Yeah.
Which are always the traditional funding base of the Democratic Party.
Up until now.
Well, I would say even earlier than now.
Yeah.
And so the Clinton, what became the Clinton wing, the third way, the new way of Democratic Leadership Council, et cetera, of the party was, okay, well, where are we going to get money? Well, the banks, insurance companies. It'd be great, wouldn't it? And what I believe came from that, and there's always been, of course, a section or a group of folks who have done this, Tammany Hall and all of it, who realize that they can make money out of politics. But I think especially in the 90s, you had an entire party structure at the top realizing I can make a hell of a lot of money from this. But that's not the roots of our party.
Yeah.
We are the party of Jefferson and Madison, who, excuse me, not only wrote the Declaration, but wrote the Constitution. The arguments of not just freedom from religion, not just freedom of religion, but freedom from religion.
Yeah.
They advocated for the progressive income tax, for the inheritance tax, for the estate tax, to quote unquote prevent the establishment of a permanent upper class. We're the party of Teddy Roosevelt, the first progressive who said that these massive corporations can't exist, that it's un-American. The Antitrust Act, breaking up the big trusts, the oil company who owned the rail company, who owned the logging company, who owned the shipping company, who broke all that up, the establishment of national parks. A perfect man? Absolutely not. None of us are. We are the party.
Yeah.
We are the party of I'll skip Wilson. I was going to give him a little credit for the League of Nations, but he's become a controversial figure. We are the party of Franklin Roosevelt, the New Deal that not just won a war, but saved capitalism from itself.
Yeah.
And not just here in this country, but worldwide. We're the party of Kennedy and Johnson. We're not the party of the 90s. But yet so many of those folks and so much of that philosophy lives on to the detriment of others in our party, like myself, and I believe yourself.
Well,
and have we lost? Is that where we lost? Because I happen to point to that as a very seminal point. Is that where we lost perhaps even our credibility, if that's the correct word, with folks in the rural areas? When you go into rural areas and say, that school, that post office, that dam, that flood mitigation system, that power plant, these roads, we gave you and built all of that for you. But now we're the party of big money.
It's interesting, right? I advocate for folks, if folks are interested in doing our trainings, that one part is us talking about, taking up office in the elected official, as an elected official in the municipal space, right? Taking up power in that perspective. But it's also understanding, and this is why we like to work with county chairs and town chairs and Democratic Commission folks. If you're open to already doing this, you are open to being vocal about the lack of investment in rural America by the Democratic Party. And if you are open to doing that and you represent the county, we need to work on making sure that our voices are being heard, not just by the party leadership, but by, and this is like a point that you might disagree with me on, but I believe this, right? There's towns like Williamsport, there's towns like Elmira, there's towns in your county and stuff, right? And there's working class kids that live there, right? And some of those working class kids, they might get a knack to do, something cool, right? Like they might become a really good engineer or something, right? And if they get the opportunity, right? And this is what I really want to change about American politics is this is a current reality now, right? Some of those kids get the opportunity to end up in New York and they become really successful. They're not going to forget where they're from, right? And if we can connect them and their notion of their hometowns dying and being able to make sure that we can create a better situation for that changes it changes the conversation for a lot of folks running for office, right? Because you always remember where you're from and you always remember what it was like, and you don't want it to go away, right? And I'm not saying that rural America should be a zoo for rich millionaire donors, but that there's a notion of the leadership, right? And the leadership, because Jeff, I also encourage this, right? I'm not saying fight fire with fire. I think we should have a way to kind of outdo Citizens United. But right now, right, the issue is that leadership sometimes wants to play, and again, this is my opinion, they want to play, gatekeeper around a lot of folks in these spaces, these progressive donor alliances and stuff like that.
Right.
and they don't have any right to.
No.
And if you're running for office in Northampton County, or if you're running for office, you know, in Chemung County, or if you're running in Escambia or wherever across the country, and you're running for legislature, and you have the ability to reach out to these folks, you should, and you shouldn't be scared to. The party builds it in you to blame them for the lack of victory in your area, because it is easier for them to be blamed than for us to be able to take this action. And I could tell you, I could go on example about folks who have told me, well, we never thought about reaching out to donors outside of our county. And it's like, you want to talk about like folks being able to like put up numbers. There are progressive donors in places like New York City, right, that are willing to give money, and that's a real force, right? And that you see that in AOC and in Bernie Sanders and stuff like that, right? That there are thousands of donors, right? Not even wealthy donors, people who can give 10, 15 bucks, right? And if we can build a movement around that, and being able to like make sure that people know that we're taking up space and stuff, because the other thing that's interesting about this is that there's a lot of what I call heart policy. It's policy about the heartland, but it's also, it makes your heart warm up, right? It makes you feel great inside when you know that American democracy isn't so damaged that 19-year-olds can't get elected to school board, or that American democracy isn't so damaged that a black person can't run for mayor of a small town, right? You okay?
Yeah, no, I got an itch.
Okay.
We're human over here.
Yeah.
Got an itch. It happens.
Yeah,
Not always the most attractive thing on a camera, but what can I tell you? It happens, kids.
That American democracy isn't damaged enough to be able to, to not have these things happen that used to be so common in American history, right? Like we think of these like ideas of us overcoming boundaries as a country and overcoming barriers, right? Like as a nation, because we're a nation of immigrants and stuff. And if we can't translate that into letting people be able to take political power in these small communities, then we have nothing. Because I will tell you something, some of these rural communities are the last places where the election isn't already decided, where it's not decided by partisanship and it's not decided by everyone. Because, I think that there's something really beautiful, even though our system is messed up, the fact that 50,000 farmers or factory workers can literally decide the future of the country by the fact that they can elect a member of Congress in like central New York or southwestern Pennsylvania, or your area or something like that.
Does that lead to the very old cliche and very worn cliche that all politics is local? For the same reason that you can see that Republican official in a local restaurant, and you can have a perfectly congenial conversation. Is it that kind of conversation? Is it that kind of same facial recognition that and that work, and it is work that can overcome the all too ingrained view that I've often made the joke on this program. It's not really a joke, though. It's actually sadly ingrained. There are places in Pennsylvania. Sadly, there are probably places in the more rural areas of New York. And folks, trust me, there are very rural areas of New York. It's not all Manhattan, where Jesus Christ himself could run as a Democrat and not win simply because he has a D behind his name. So I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm trying to distill what we're talking about for all the folks who are listening who are not the inside baseball people.
Yeah,
that you
sorry,
and I
I'm
are.
knack of doing that.
Are you trying to say that it begins with those conversations? It begins with convincing people that, yeah, you're a Democrat in a rural area, but that doesn't mean that you can never be elected to office. You have to at first believe that you can. And we do that through policy, through history, through science, through data, and through you walking around to people that you already know and saying, you know me.
Yeah.
You know what's in my heart. You know what I believe in. You may not enjoy the D after my name, but let's set that aside. Let's talk about that you can't afford to see a doctor. Let's talk about the fact that your kid's school has 45 students in a class instead of the 15 to 18 that's recommended them. Let's talk about the fact that you can't, you're paycheck to paycheck. Your road is crumbling. Your bridge is crumbling. The dam that holds the river back from your property is that close to going.
Yeah.
Or here in Pennsylvania, your land's been fracked. You're dying slowly from poison.
Yeah.
The governor here just introduced his budget. There are progressives and Democrats all across the Commonwealth who are so damn excited about it. There's child tax credits in it and daycare credits, and he's going to put $3 billion into education. He wants to raise the income tax by $3 billion, even though we can show the budget, the PA Budget and Policy Center can show that the poorest people in the Commonwealth disproportionately pay the income tax. Guess what? We give $3.2 billion in free money to the fossil fuel industry in subsidies and giveaways every single year. I have a crazy idea. Don't raise the tax.
Yeah.
And take it back from the fossil fuel industry. That's what Democrats are supposed to stand for.
Yeah.
Take the D off the back of the name. We're the ones that want you to see a doctor.
Exactly.
I mean, is it that simple? And yet we're not doing it.
Jeff, and that's why groups like us got created, right? Because we've noticed that, like, and this is just not in the Democratic Party, because let's be honest
our
here.
revolution was created. It's why our revolution kept going after the Sanders campaign of 16. We are connecting with people out here because we're telling you and making you try to realize that you keep voting against your own self-interest. Have an attic full of guns, I don't care. You can't go see a doctor. When does that matter to you? When does it count?
That's the thing that that's why like Outrun was created, right? Like, because like I said, like, it's not just Democratic groups. It's, there's dysfunction everywhere, right?
But you're not reaching the groups on the right. They're a corporation. They're not a functioning political party anymore. They are a corporation.
And that's where I think a lot of the work that we do that's really exciting, right? Is we like to use this term called the lazy incumbent syndrome, right? All right, so I hate to play your age in anything like that, but let's say you've been on the town board for 20 years already, right? You got there when you were 30
years old. You can use my age against me all you want. I'm 50 going on 900 the way I'm healthy. You just use me, beat me up. I can take it.
But like, let's say, I'll give you an example. A friend of mine is 20 years old, right? At 19, he wasn't getting any help from his local party because they didn't think he'd get elected, right? And this is really interesting. So, let's say you're your town board member and you've been on the town board for 20 years, right? You're 60, right? So you think you're fine, right? You don't think anybody can run against you. You don't think anyone can win, right? Along comes a kid.
And sometimes you think somebody doesn't even, it's as simple as someone doesn't have the guts to run against you.
Exactly.
Sadly.
Right? And so we help people build that energy, right? And we build that energy by making sure that people like that the young person knows that they can run for office, and that sometimes the power that the incumbent has. I like that red mirage phrase that we learned from the election, because that's all that is.
Mm-hmm.
These are some legislators that have just been getting elected by collecting signatures and not being opposed, right? Because they're unbeatable, right? That's not true. Everyone is loved until they're not loved. Everyone does something right until they didn't do right, right? Like the Democrats here, they love the mayor of Elmira. He's a Republican that's raised taxes 8 times. We pay something like $7,000 or $8,000 in property taxes on a house of $130,000, right? So each year, right? And that's happening again and again. And so they create these boundaries. They create these images of Republican elected officials as unbeatable. And we show them through being able to show them a campaign plan, to showing them the data of the town and like what the path to victory would look like. We show them that happens. And that person out there that wants to run for office and doesn't know what to do, and the party's just, the party or progressive organizations are either too caught up in national politics or just not really understanding what they can do either, because sometimes, let's be honest, right? Some of these groups have been turned into social clubs. Why? Because nobody has ever actually told them this is what we need to do. And also there's some pushback there, right? And we can talk about the institutional racism within the Democratic Party later. But, to finish my story, right? So 19-year-old kid runs for town board, right? The incumbent, you're a 60-year-old. You don't think you have to do anything, right? You sit there, right? This kid almost knocks you off the ballot. This kid sends mailers in your hometown. You get his mailers, right? You hear this, right? And guess what? He proceeds to run the closest election for town board in the town's history, in a Democrat versus Republican. And he proceeds to almost become the latest Democratic elected official elected there since the 1960s, right? That scares you, right? And this kid realizes that he has political power. And so, yeah, he might not have won that. But guess what? Let's say a school board race opens, right? And there's nobody running for that. And this kid runs and he gets elected to school board and he becomes the youngest elected school board member in New York State. And that's my friend Tyler Privulik. And that happened. And so, that's what's exciting. That's the movement that we need to actually have a conversation around, right? We tend to go into community, and like the thing that I hate about the party is that they create situations where they send people who, I don't hate the party, right? They send consultants and folks in that just, oh yeah, let's run this race. We're going to build the field program and stuff, but there is no generational organizing happening, right? There are generations of young people who have had to leave central Pennsylvania, West Virginia, upstate New York, different parts of the country, because of the lack of jobs and the lack of investments. And that status quo is not sustainable. It's just not. And the 2016 election showed that. In the 2020 election, if it showed anything, it showed that we actually need to do more rural organizing. And that we need to figure out a way to get these kids, like I said earlier, that work at Panera and Starbucks that are college educated, to be able to actually get them to be able to stay in the community. Because I will tell you something, a 20-something coffee shop owner that wants to run for mayor, that's a future mayor. Right? Somebody who actually in downtown Elmira will say, everyone's welcome here and we're a progressive space. That's a future mayor, right? Somebody who works as a factory worker, as a steel worker, right? Somebody who's able to get into the trades like that, right? That's in their early 20s and stuff. I have a couple of friends like that. That's a future councilman. That could be a future congressman. And if we don't think that way, we're not gonna be able to mobilize. But that's what Outrun does. We tend to make sure that county Democratic Party and progressive organizations stop thinking of candidate recruitment as an action, as more, and think of it as more as an organizational tool. Because I'll tell you something, 60% of people, 70 to 80% of people, when you ask them to run, they'll say no, right? But you're only asking people within the committee. We never think of people running for office as something bigger than just looking within the Democratic Party or looking within the local progressive space. And that's why you hear people say, oh, but we can't find people to run for office. It's really hard. Ask a barista. Ask that kid that's working in a coffee shop what he thinks about that town. Ask whoever is working at Target what they think about what's happening, right? And involve them and engage them. And who cares?
Especially because these places have become town centers to an extent. Become social town centers. Yeah. The local coffee shop, even if it's not a chain like Starbucks, or the local, back in the day, the way the barber shop used to be, the place where you talked about these things. They are the social spaces. The fancy new brew pub in town is the social space. Yeah, where these conversations take place. So I'm just to build on what you're saying. I mean, so ask that bartender, ask that barista, ask that checkout person at the local grocery. They hear it. They see more people in a day than you do.
And I could tell you stories about, I was like, I met this kid who he's a really nice, like a good friend of mine who Marine veteran, lived in his car for a while, been through a whole lot of things in life. Nobody had ever asked him to get involved in Democratic Party politics before. Until I did, right? And this was when I was like still a state party officer and doing all this stuff across rural upstate New York and stuff. And I involved him. And he is now, he's actively, it's actually kind of cool. He's actually running like a very good opposition campaign to a local district city judge who's running a lot of like different, has done like a lot of horrible things in the area, right? and we've become very active around prison reform and stuff, right? I've always wondered whether or not the definition of moderation is artificial creation of Republican bubbles. Because I'll tell you what, I think that people who talk about bipartisanship and stuff like that, it's not that they don't know what they it's not that they don't know what they want, it's that they don't know who they are, right? And that to me is another thing that like I like to kind of talk about, right? Like that there's a fake binary there in thinking that you either have to be a moderate and you can't be progressive. Progressive policies will work, and we can actually show them working for rural communities, right? It's just like what you said earlier. I would take it a different approach, and I'm not trying to disagree with you, but I would like argue,
You can disagree with me all you want. We can take it. People disagree with me all the time.
Yeah. I would say, when we talk about outsourcing and stuff, right? We talk about the Democratic Party, like only in New York is about 2 hours from here. It's a town that, Donald Trump won by 58%, but the whole city council are Democrats, right? And they have a former cop that's a mayor. A factory just shut down in that area, a steel plant, right? And the Republican mayor, nothing. The congressman, oh, we're sorry that this happened, right? State senator, nothing, right? The president of the Democratic president of the city council is now my friend John Crawford, who's a professor of finance and stuff. Usually somebody who would be on the other side of this issue in terms of outsourcing is defiantly leading the fight to make sure that our Congressman Tom Reed and the state level leaders in the governor's office and stuff actually find a replacement for this plant, because that's 2,000 families out of a job, and it's irresponsible to think that that's okay, right? And
that's an excellent example. Let me see if I can build on that example.
Yeah.
And folks, if you're watching on Facebook or wherever you're watching, we're thrilled that you're doing that. You can come to the home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information, join the live chat. But for our friends, or in addition to our friends, sisters, brothers, family members, and so on Hot101.net, the phone line is open. You can talk to me. You can talk to Paolo. Scream at me, yell at me, disagree, agree, contribute, engage, be a part of the program. If I wanted to lecture at you 24 hours a day, you have NPR for that. This is not a lecture. We love NPR, and it's exceptionally informative, but it's a lecture. I don't want to lecture to you. Engage the program. And by the way, I posted on That Other Side of Information the Kennedy Effect bingo card. Oh, cool. So you can play bingo. You'll see it, Paolo. You'll see it. If I knew how to share it onto the screen, I would. I don't. But we've been kidding for weeks that we're going to start playing bingo during the program, because there are so many things that I mention over and over and over again that you can fill out a bingo card and you can play. So play along at home and win. The bingo card is on That Other Side of Information, our Facebook page. So I almost forgot where the heck I was going to go with that question. I think I have forgotten my question to an extent.
Yeah.
Terrible. Oh, no, sorry. He regained his brain. Wow, he found it. It's awesome. Is that a message? If we just, and I don't want to necessarily stick to just the one message, but is this a message? It was in, I believe, the very first time it was done may have been in that 74 days that President Obama and Democrats controlled all of government, and it was Republicans that filibustered and stopped it.
Yeah.
And the tax cut bills going from Reagan to Bush, and most recently the Trump Republican Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell tax cuts, we know actually incentivize the offshoring of jobs, whereas it was Speaker Pelosi in 2009, among one of the very first pieces of legislation she put through the House was to reverse that.
Yeah.
We will tax incentivize you to bring jobs back to America. And it was McConnell in the Senate that filibustered it and killed it.
Yeah.
Is that not a simple message to build on the point that you were making about the town near you, and you don't have to tell us about closing steel plants in PA. I mean,
I just thought that
you don't
that's
have to tell us about that, but
yeah.
we drive by them all the time. I live 5 minutes from one of the biggest in the country. The Bethlehem Steel built this country and won a war. But is that the kind of message, the opening, maybe a crack in the wall, so to speak, and opening a place where you can dig through right-wing hate media machine and say, look, folks, this is or do you have the same problems there of people just simply not believing you? If you get yourself in front of a crowd of people, whether it's Zoom or when, back in the day when we used to be able to like literally see people in person, hopefully a day coming again, and you could stand in front of a room to them and say, look, this is the truth. What I'm telling you is the truth. Democrats have tried to make it so that we bring jobs back here. It is the Republicans who have taken your tax dollars and paid it to the largest corporations to send them out of the country.
It's interesting, right? That's where I think the party lacks like strict messaging, but I also think that this is a specific space where, all right, like, look, I think that one thing that kind of like really dealt Democrats the situation that they're in now is that they refuse to take like a really good stand on free trade, right? And we can talk about the Trans-Pacific Partnership and NAFTA and all that stuff, right? But specifically now, right, in many congressional districts across the country, and this is like a really good example of the disconnect. Let's talk about the fact that a lot of candidates running in central Indiana, in upstate New York, in different parts of Pennsylvania and stuff, lost, right? But what did they lose? They wanted to run campaigns on issues that they thought mattered, and they wanted to run in opposition to Donald Trump. And you can't just run you can't just be a liberal reaction in a competitive congressional district. You need to take care, and you need to be able to like understand the issues of the area, right?
Let me immediately push back on you.
Oh, please go ahead.
Is it not? Well, I agree with you. Let me do both. Let me push back and agree with you all at the same time. Because I agree that you have to run on something. Republicans are reactionary. They are 5-alarm fire every day.
Yeah.
This is no good for you. This is no good for you. This is no good for you. We can't do this. We can't do this. We can't do this. Taxes, guns, God, gay, abortion. Liberal. We get it. I get it. And at the end of the day, they're actually not running on anything.
Yeah.
I have always maintained, for example, Abigail Spanberger, someone like that. I have always maintained that folks will always vote for the real thing over the fake thing.
Yeah.
So aren't we really talking about these Democrats who ran like Republican light in what they thought were purple districts? And I guess history actually shows they are purple districts. But when they ran like Republicans, people will vote for the real Republican, even if they don't like him or her, or don't like the lack of policy, because at least they're the real thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I would say this, right? I guess for me, the thing that we like to do is to tell folks, and I like Abigail Spanberger. I thought she had a really good speech and stuff, and like, a lot of the stuff that she said about being attacked and stuff about tying her to Obama and stuff like that, because those are like right-wing talking points and stuff. That she's a genuine person, right? So if you can actually communicate your genuine politics, right? If you can actually show that you are the person that you're telling these people that you are, if you can do that, you win, right?
Well,
and
don't these policy votes, these ballot initiatives, that we've seen throughout the country, the $15 minimum wage in New Jersey,
Florida,
marijuana legalization in places like Mississippi, in North Dakota, The fact that the population of North Dakota will not ever allow the Republican majority there to shut down the state bank.
Yeah.
And these progressive policy initiatives that passed throughout the country, even in deep red states, does that not teach us as Democrats?
And progressives.
Well, progressives are Democrats. I'm starting to wary of the title progressives. We're the roots of your damn party.
Yeah.
We're not just the base, we're the roots. We're the people that started it. You corporate ones in the 90s, you're old, you're tired, and your policies don't work. It's Republican light. Time to move out now. Thank you for finding us a funding source for 20 years. But if anything that Senator Sanders and many, many others have shown us is that you can fundraise from the grassroots.
Exactly.
Stop with the fossil fuel subsidy giveaways, and we can go along with that tax cut as long as it's 34% instead of 35 and shit like that. And it has to stop.
Yeah.
So that said, does this not show us that actually bold, traditional democratic values win?
If you're
not when you stand there, even in these red districts, not when you stand there and say, I agree with my Republican colleague.
Yeah.
I don't exactly agree with him, but yeah, we could means test that program. Or, oh, free college for 4 years? Nah, maybe we'll just hope with it. No.
Yeah.
These policies not only work, but they are popular. And it's when you stand up for them is when you are victorious and when you win. And you can't initiate, you can't implement any of these policies if you don't win.
Exactly. And that's the one thing that, like, that's where I think, one of the things that you're talking about, Jeff, that I think you're kind of alluding to, it shows us that. But what it also shows us is that, in this notion of, like, if you don't win, you can't promote the policies, because you're right. We need to tell that to groups like DSA. Honestly, and not DSA in your area, not DSA in wherever, in Ithaca or whatever, right? Because those are small groups, right? But the DSA of Brooklyn, the DSA of Queens, right? As long as they create this, I'm going to be honest with you, I think it's kind of a charade, right? That they're this working class movement, right? That's actually standing up for working class people. And you go to a meeting, and I'll hold to this, right? That it's a predominantly white affluent organization, occupying neighborhoods that were predominantly African American and Latino, right? And I can't comment on that because I'm also somebody who moved to New York City and stuff, and like took that and slept, rented an apartment and stuff like that. I'm part of the problem too. I'm not gonna lie, but I admit it, right? And I'm not gonna sit there and try to lecture people like me about screaming about the Green New Deal at a black congressman who just got elected from upstate New York, which is something that happened, right? Or saying that people have to call themselves socialists in order to like get support from progressive organizations, right? I had to talk to somebody from North Brooklyn DSA about Tioga County, which is northern PA, right? They're not that far from me, right? And they were like, they're not like moderates, but they're like, it's talking to me about her local, some town Democratic committee. She was like, she wanted me to do an outrun training there. And I was like, they're not moderates and like they agree with us, they're pretty lefty. And I'm like, that doesn't matter to me. You
Right.
get me a town supervisor that's willing to say fracking is destroying my land, or we need to do something about outsourcing. And that matters to me more than somebody calling themselves a socialist. I'm not here for the window dressing. I'm here for a new window. I'm here to make sure that we do generational change and we do it in a way that's understanding and comprehensive for our rural communities. Because I'll be honest with you, half of these kids, they're great. I love, I've talked to like state senator in Brooklyn, Julie Sowers, she's great, but the organization needs to understand its own boundaries, and they need to understand that sometimes they cannot exist in communities like ours if they're going to continue to perpetuate this idea that they are this working class organization. And I'll say this, right? Because, good old boys in your county and my county would say, yeah, those guys, they're rich kids. And if they can point that out, right? That's not a right-wing talking point.
Right.
That's truth, right?
Let me ask you this then.
Yeah.
Because this is, again, something else that I believe. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to believe it. No one does. It's just something that I happen to believe.
Yeah.
Are there too many groups on the left?
Yeah.
Are there too many progressive groups?
Yes.
Because I seem to run into a lot of folks who are saying, well, I'm starting a group to do this and I'm starting a group to do that. There's already 100 different groups that do that. I have a better idea for you. Why don't you get the heads of those other 100 groups and make maybe 3 groups?
And that's what Run is trying to do.
And then actually, instead of having 100 different groups with 10 members, why don't you have one group with 100 members? Or sorry, my math's wrong, 1,000 members. My math got wrong there. Too many zeros. But you understand what I'm getting at.
Yes.
Are there, I'm absolutely biased. I'm saying it right now. I'm 100% absolutely biased. I think so many of these groups should be uniting under the Our Revolution flag because it's what we're already doing and have been doing for 5 years, coming on 6. So, but even if you don't think that one is the right one for you, there has to be another one. But do we have to have 1,000 groups, or maybe we should have about 5?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you something. Our revolution in Pennsylvania might be different than our revolution in New York, because NYPAN, New York Progressive Action Network, is a group that I categorically refuse to work with. And that's because one of their board members that they refused to remove for a while was somebody who had been accused of like harassment and stuff by multiple women. So there is like a benefit of having like different groups. But the one thing that I think needs to happen is that, like, you know, there's people in North Brooklyn who want to do work to help, you know, flip congressional districts and stuff, right? And it almost seems like there's a competitive nature of like different groups trying to reach out to them to get them to call into these different districts, and it doesn't work because, you know what, at the end of the day, we all end up not benefiting, right? And so, you know, we get into a situation where, like, you know, we get candidates that are not great, right? And I could give you, I'm not going to name their names, right? But, you know, the lady who said, you know, steel turbines are a 19th century job in regards to jobs being outsourced in my district, New York 23rd. And the guy who, for some reason, you know, wanted to do things, you know, to talk about just things that didn't matter in the district, right? Like did ads in Korean and stuff. There's no Korean population near Buffalo or anything in New York's 27th district, right? And that's a real thing. People like that are being nominated, right? So we need to figure out a way to consolidate the voice, because I will tell you what, I have seen what happens when there's a vacuum of power, and I have seen the kind of people that get into positions of power when there's a vacuum of power. I don't like to use Iraq or anything like that as like an example, but like,
yeah, but it is one.
Yeah, right.
A libertarian experiment, by the way.
Yeah.
Because I know there's a vibrant libertarian community in New York. It's actually a political party that has ballot access, and it's
not anymore.
Iraq was a libertarian experiment.
Yeah.
And we see how it worked out. Somalia is a libertarian experiment. Yeah. The central I don't have to tell you, the Central American countries, Guatemala, Honduras, you know, they had the audacity to democratically elect democratic socialists, but Reagan couldn't have that, so sent the CIA in to destroy all those countries, and now we're seeing the migrants flood north.
Yeah. Well,
40 years later.
But that, you know, I could get into that because I think that's a little bit more complicated. But to the point that I was making is like, there are counties out here that are, you know, counties where folks should run for office, right? But nobody's being asked to, because the party sets itself into a situation where they just have arguments with each other about whether this person has experience or not, or whether or not we should endorse them, right? And so then nobody ends up running for office because they get asked not to. But guess what happens then? And this is a real example, right? You know, nobody wants to run for town supervisor. Nobody thinks they should run for town supervisor. Town supervisor's retiring, right?
Right.
The town is a Democratic town, right? Cool. Somebody who says they're progressive and they're open about their progressiveness, and is like, you know, something who's somebody like willing to talk about these things, ends up running, right? Turns out that their definition of progressivism also allows the idea that we need to talk about, you know, 5G conspiracies and pushing anti-vaccine mandates, right?
Right.
the fact that they're a town supervisor that has access to members of Congress and stuff, and that they can do that in front of elected officials and stuff like that while their towns are dealing with economic crises and stuff, that's the vacuum of power that's scary. And that's how fringe characters end up getting power, right? And we can fix that by making sure that, like, you know, we can consolidate our power and we can say it's okay to not do that. We don't have to have candidates that have been accused of like different things running for office, right? That's not progressive. And at the end all be all, you know, you don't need to have people who are problematic to be part of your staff just because you want to be inclusive, right? We don't need to like say yes to the fringe or anything like that. I think that's a big thing that the left needs to do. I think that we need to actually like come up with a way of creating a better ethically sourced product. You know what I mean? To a sense. And then the other thing is, like, I agree with you that there's like way too many groups. But you know, some people start groups and they don't tend to think that like there needs to be a better understanding of like what they're doing, because like some groups are much better equipped than you know, some other groups, and so that leads to situations where you'll have people running for office, right? And maybe they'll think that it's not a good idea to ask people from outside of their counties to fundraise, and you know, obviously it is. So.
How much when you approach someone to run?
Yeah.
What's the first, if not the first, what are the first bits of pushback that you get? Actually, you know what? Let me stop. It's 7 p.m. 7:02 Eastern Time here in the United States in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. My honored guest. I'm very happy to have met him just last Wednesday, but I'm looking forward to a growing friendship and what I hope will be a growing working relationship, not just on this program, but off of it. Is Paolo Cremidis. He is one of the organizers, originators, founders of Our Run Coalition.
Outrun.
Outrun. What did I say? Oh, because I'm mixing Our Revolution. Sorry. I got Our Revolution in my head. I'm going to talk to them in an hour. Our Sunday night calls in an hour. Yeah. Sorry. Outrun Coalition. Please. Yeah, you smack me around and correct me anytime I get something like that wrong. You just go right in there. The Outrun Coalition, where he works to find and grow and cultivate and train Democratic candidates in rural areas, retaking areas that were always traditionally Democratic, by the way, since the New Deal. Wherever you're watching on Facebook, thank you very, very much. About 80 different outlets now on Facebook. Stay where you are, enjoy, listen in the background, listen while you're having dinner, listen while you're having Valentine's dinner, because what's more romantic than this voice? Or come to our home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information, join the live chat. The phone line is open. The phone line is open. You can call, speak to me, speak to Paolo, ask a question, give us a comment, share a thought, disagree, agree, whatever you wish. The phone line is open. If you're watching on Facebook, you can see the phone number on your screen. You can ring it. I should hear it. I don't always hear that ringtone, sadly, but I will try to keep an eye and make sure that I grab you. 267-227-9189 is the number, and it is live and open right now. 267-227-9189. Hot101.net family, thank you for being here. You can listen to Hot101.net on the main website page at, you got it, Hot101.net, or through the apps, Apple App Store, Google Play Store, if you have an Android device, and look for Hot101.net. If you have the TuneIn Radio app, just go to the search bar and search Hot101.net. You can email the program, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. Tweet us at thatkennedytalk. Give us a like, a follow, a subscription. YouTube, if you missed any part of the program will be sent over to YouTube in its entirety. That Other Side of Information on YouTube. You can watch past episodes, full length, full episodes. You can listen to me talk for a very long time on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram, That Other Side of Information. You can find me on LinkedIn at Jeff Kennedy, and our Patreon page is up. You can become a Patreon subscriber and receive private, personal, subscriber only content and goodies and things over there, all money that comes in through the Patreon will be turned back into the program, not for profit, but back into the program and improving this program and continually bringing you a better program. I would say a better looking program, but I can't do anything about this. This just is what it is.
I've been told I gotta shave.
When I say better looking program, this is not part of the better looking part, I guess, unless I make myself a cat, which seems to become a thing now. So there's all that. But all that said, we're thankful that you're here as we enter our third hour. We continue our conversation with Paolo. And again, the phone line is open, 267-227-9189. So when you approach someone, Paolo, about running for office, what would I assume most of the folks that you approach would be running for the first time?
Yeah.
What is the very first thing, or maybe first couple of fears, objections, worries that you encounter? Because I'm sure you encounter many of the same ones over and over again. And like any politician, you have to knock down opposition talking points. So what do you approach that barista or that grocery clerk or the bartender or
hairstylist,
these people, your stylist even, absolutely. These folks that actually come into contact day to day with more people than you and I probably do, as just a matter of course of their daily lives. And you approach them and you think, and you say to them whatever the opening, I shouldn't say opening line, that makes it sound a little weird, but I mean, what is that opening approach? To say, I think you'd be great for office. And they say, well, I don't know. What are those first couple of things, those first fears or concerns that you're usually hit with?
Number one, fear of reprisal from employers for wanting to run as Democrats.
Good God in heaven.
Which is illegal.
I was expecting it is illegal, although the NRLB does not defend like it used to, or its own laws will say, by the way, and you cannot discriminate in the workplace based on your political persuasion. But that is fascinating that is the first thing you would say. I thought you would have said money.
Well,
I don't have the time, or I'm going to school, or wow.
That's one.
Reprisal from an employer. Folks, my goodness, wherever you're listening, I hope that hit home. I hope that sunk into your skulls, that we have become a nation that has a significant number of people in rural areas, and I would say some in urban areas as well, who will not run for office because they fear their employer.
Or they think that the employer...
Tell me that was the United States before Reagan, because I don't think so.
It's interesting, right? Folks think that they, that they don't have the right to be able to do that because they think that they're, and this is something that I've heard from business owners too, right? I had a friend who hosted, Chuck Schumer visits each of the 62 counties across New York State, right? So,
as he should.
Which is great.
As he should. It's his job.
Because that usually means millions of dollars in funding or new legislation, usually for local stuff, which is great, right? And I love Chuck Schumer, regardless of what people think. And I had somebody to tell me, we were scared to host him because we thought that we were going to in the community for hosting him, and nothing happened, and the business was still going, right? That number two, people are afraid of being able to they think that the community is so far right wing because the party or progressive organizations have said, we can't concentrate on this. Let's just concentrate on the presidential election or something, because this is like a far right community. So they're genuinely scared of thinking that they can run for office, right? And number three, that fear of reprisal comes from the idea that they're running against a very well-connected elected official, which is not. I mean, that's the Red Mirage argument, right? Half of these guys couldn't tell you where Albany is or where Harrisburg is and stuff, but they know that they're taking the power away, right? And they couldn't tell you win numbers for their own districts, right? So the thing that we like to talk about is you don't have to be afraid of that sort of thing because you have the right to have your own political freedoms and political freedom of speech. and I tend to tell folks this that I think is very interesting. What do you think is going to happen if you lose your job in the middle of a race for local office, in a very public race for office, in a town where this business is, which isn't even a red town, that has like, folks who are here who are Democrats, which is like a town that might have voted for Joe Biden 60-70%, right? What do you think is going to happen? Are those people going to want to go to that place if you tell them what happened, right? The other thing is,
So it's kind of convincing them that that's a two-way street.
Well, not
You
only
might fear what's coming at you from your employer, but you can push back on that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're the barista at Sally's coffee stop instead of just Starbucks, because especially that's a little bit different, an independent, maybe single location coffee shop as opposed to this international conglomerate.
Yeah.
And Sally fires you. Everybody knows Sally.
And everybody knows that Sally doesn't. Everybody knows that Sally doesn't live in town.
And if you're campaigning, and at every campaign stop, you say, "Well, I had a great job at Sally's coffee shop until I started to run for office, and then until I said I was a member of the Democratic Party, and then I got fired."
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't look very good for Sally, or for Joe's steak shop, or for Martha's dress shop, or fill in the blank.
And I've had to deal with that again and again with some people trying to be very vocal about Antifa, right? And Antifa coming into town and stuff. And, these guys, you ask them, like,
have you ever tried to call Antifa?
But, it's interesting.
Or send them a card? Because this is something I continue to hear every week. It's even brought up on this program. By the way, folks, there is no single national or even local group called Antifa. They don't.
But it's interesting, right? Because
there are anti-fascist groups. There is not an Antifa. By the way, if you want to list me, if you're going to label me anything, label me on the anti-fascist side. I'll take that label every time. But try to give a phone call to Antifa. By the way, the next time your Republican friends, neighbors, or crazy Uncle Larry at Thanksgiving starts barking about Antifa, hand them a phone and ask them to call Antifa, because there isn't. You can contact the Proud Boys. You can contact the Boogaloo Boys.
Yeah.
You can contact the KKK. But you can't call Antifa. Let's just get that crap out of the way right now. Properly. Let's just spell that crap right now. But I apologize, Paolo. I really took you over there. But
yeah.
So repercussions from an employer. What are the other things that you feel that you hear from folks who are like, I can't because
I can't meet the schedule, right? Even though when they're an elected official, they can set the schedule and meetings to a time when they can actually meet. It takes too much work, even though some of these the county legislature meets twice a month. I think county commissions in Pennsylvania meet like maybe 3 times a month or something like that. I could be wrong. Town boards meet twice a month, right? Borough councils don't meet daily or something. People think that this is a full-time job, right? And part of dispelling that myth is that that's part of the mirage, right? Because, and let me just say it this way, right? Because I'm going to sound really woke and really millennial here. Like, people think that these jobs are designed for, like, older white men to be able to run their rural communities. That's not always the truth, right? Because you can actually show that these communities, the folks can actually run in these communities and win, and you can make the schedule. When you're the mayor, you can make the schedule run around you, right? And if you're a mayor in a small town that has a city manager, you have to be able to be vocal. You have a bully pulpit, right? But it's not a full-time job because you have a city manager, right? And you have a town council that does the same thing. You meet twice a month, you propose legislation. You have the ability when you run for office to set your schedule, but also if you think of ideas to develop things like artist housing and stuff like that, if you ever wanted to see stuff like that, like you wanted to see a Starbucks in your town, or you want to see like a local coffee shop, right? Or local art being displayed in downtown. You want to see the renovation, the re-innovation of downtown rural small towns. That's where it starts, right? And you can set an agenda around that, because you know what? I'll tell you something. Most of the council, like a lot of the older council members have been there for a while. Why have they been there for a while? Yes, on the budget. Yes. All right, let's go home. right? If they get reelected, some of them do amazing jobs, some of them will be your allies. But these councils need to have the innovation of having younger people on them, or more diverse people, because it creates a space for us to be able to mobilize people around that, right? And so that's where I think is what I would say to that, right? The other thing that we hear is, the time thing. I have a day job and stuff. Again, you are someone who have been duly elected by the voters, and because you have been duly elected by the voters, you have the ability to make sure that your schedule fits you, right? It's not the other way around. You are the person who was elected. You should be able to set up a schedule that works for you, right? And that works really well. The other thing is institutional racism, Jeff. People thinking, I can't run in this place. It's too white. I can't run in this place. I'm Latino. What are they going to do to me, right?
Yeah.
We tend to have these real conversations. And that is one thing that I really hate sometimes that happens from within the party and progressive spaces that we really need to talk about and start talking about as operatives and stuff like that, is that we need to start talking about standing up against institutional racism within the Democratic Party and progressive groups. And in order to do that, we need to be able to kind of clamp down on that sort of talk. We don't need people being told that they can't run for office based on experience. And guess what? Those people usually tend to be younger. They tend to be women. They tend to be people of color, Black and brown folks. And they tend to be LGBTQ plus folks, right? If we're going to continue this conversation about going down the same path.
Do you have that? Do you tend to have, I guess is a better way to say it. Do you tend to have the discussion with these potential candidates in a similar, if not the same wording, perhaps the same vein, that the party apparatus will say you can't run for you have no experience, and you can tell me if you think this is oversimplistic. Oh, you can't run, you have no experience. How do you get the experience without running?
Exactly.
Same as a job. I applied for a job to be a whatever, fill in the blank. Well, you can't have, we're not hiring you. You have no experience. How do I get experience if you don't hire me for the job?
And let me tell you something for your audience. The next time, if you want to,
it's not campaigning. Yeah, I mean, it's not campaigning the same thing. It's not being a candidate the same thing. You can't run for that. You have no experience. Well, how do I? Yeah. Let's remember, folks, one of the wonderful things, I'm going to get on my soapbox here. Poor Paolo could probably go eat dinner, but I'm going to get on my soapbox for a tiny bit. Host's privilege, let's put it that way. Presenter's privilege. Folks, you see my name on the screen. My name is it's in the name of the program. One of the principles, whether you like the family or not, whether you liked the former president, former senators or not, one of the principles of the Kennedy family is that politics can and is a noble profession. When I work with candidates, I tell them, I can walk down Main Street and hand an unsheltered person $1. And I've done a good thing. I've helped that person. Or I can get involved in politics, run for office, and make policy to help all of them. We all have been given this vision that politics is a dirty business. And one of the great ironies of this vision, and that it's been given to us by the party that has made it dirty, that has made it unsavory, that has made it big business, that has made it a view of something that you don't even want to listen to the news anymore.
Yeah.
And that's just the way they want it. But I swear to you, on this family name, it isn't always, and sometimes it's a lot of damn hard work, and sometimes it's very humbling. And I have been humbled a lot in politics. But it's also still, I believe to my core, to be a noble endeavor. It is a noble endeavor.
100%.
It is the best way and arguably the most direct way to help massive numbers of people at one time. Again, I can give an unsheltered person $1, or I can pass a series of policies and programs to help them all. So let me step back from my soapbox, and I will let Paolo continue to answer the question and share with us what potential candidates fear or their reasons for possibly not running. So I apologize for jumping on you, but sorry. No, you know what? No, screw that. Not sorry. Politics is a noble endeavor. I don't think you got involved in politics, Paolo, because you enjoyed the spotlight or because you thought you were going to get rich or because, I mean, you have to have an ego in politics. Let's just be blunt. You have to have one.
Yeah.
But because that ego needs to be able to be big enough to take the punches and bruises that are going to come with it.
Yeah, man.
But I don't think you got into politics to get rich. I don't think you got into politics to be, you know, the equivalent of Karl Rove on TV. I don't think you did it for that. It's a noble profession. It is a noble endeavor. I believe it can be a noble endeavor again.
Yes.
So what else do folks tell you that they're afraid of? Money, I would assume.
Well, money, they don't even think that
The
they
ability
need
to raise money, perhaps.
Well, so that's the thing. It's like once you actually have the conversation, like, you know, it's not for the faint of heart. And folks say, you know, well, you know, I work as a cashier or something, and I don't know if I can raise money, right? But that's why national organizations exist, right? Like Working Families Party and Run for Something and stuff that will give you the trainings on on how to be able to reach out to folks, right? And the one thing, Jeff, that's really good is that, you know, it might be hard to raise money, but the money's there, right? And if you can build a capacity for yourself to raise that money, guess what? That money is probably better off with you, someone who's going to run for local office, than it is sitting in the coffers of the Lincoln Project or, you know, sitting in the coffers of some PAC that's going to help somebody run for Congress in a safe blue district, right? And so what do? We tell folks the reality, and we tell them that, you know, you do have to have an ego in politics, but to check yourself, right? Sometimes, and to also allow the understanding that, like, you know, the real conversation, this is a real conversation we have, you know, understanding that structures of power that have been built on racism are a thing in American politics, racism and classism, right? And that leads to situations where, you know, you're going to have to understand that you need to kind of combat that, and you need to take space. And sometimes you may stand alone, but you know what? You don't stand alone in a committee where folks are so dysfunctional they can't find people to run for office that they're trying to oppose you. You don't stand alone when thousands of voters take you to victory, because their voices matter more than the political the political cliques that exist within organizing areas, right? And so that matters, right? Looking at that and looking at the vacuums of power matter, and looking at where we need to be able to fight matters, right? The other thing that matters is you know, sure, yeah, you want to run for office, cool. Why should I listen to you, right? And that's something that I get a lot as a younger person from some folks who are older. Why should I listen to you? Who are you? Why should I help? Why should you help me?
Who the hell are you?
yeah, no, for sure. And so, and this is like something, you know, if your viewers and listeners ever deal with like someone like that, you know, who are you? You've never done this. You know, I've been doing this for 80 years. It's been the same way for the last 80 years, right? Or something. Sorry, 60 years, because 80, you know, you
get a lot of that though. We do, right?
Yeah. We ask them what a win number is.
What do you know about this kid?
Yeah, no, exactly. Ask them what a win. No, but ask them what a win number is, right? Ask
Wise
them what.
cracking kid. What do you know about this?
Yeah.
You whippersnapper, you.
Yeah. And you know, ask them what a win number is. Ask them, you know, what the how Van works. Ask him all these questions about technology that, you know, I'm not trying to be an ageist or anything, but like,
no, well, the usual answer is Van doesn't work, but that's a whole different topic.
No, the Van doesn't work, or we don't use it because
it's slow, it's not updated, it doesn't work well. That's usually the answer.
But that's the garbage in, garbage out system. Like we need to be able to kind of, that's the thing. The other thing we need to tell is people need to update their data, because like people don't understand that, like, that data is as reliable as you make it, and you have to build your universe on updating that data, right? And people think like, running for office, like, the three main things, reprisals from work, I don't have time, I don't think I have the experience, right? And that I don't have the experience thing comes, we already talked about the party being like, yeah, but we can overcome that, right? And the great thing about American democracy is that nobody controls the petitioning process. Nobody controls who can get on the ballot.
Correct.
Right? The party can't unilaterally tell you can't.
Do you believe, as I do, the media has turned its click attention to the genuine, what I believe to be a genuine civil war inside the Republican corporation.
Yeah, man.
But they have spent a lot of time, arguably since maybe as far back as 2008, but definitely since 2016, talking about this quote unquote civil war inside the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
It is my belief that while there is a much wider variety of people inside the Democratic Party, I happen to personally believe that progressives outnumber the corporate wing. It just so happens that the corporate wing are still the ones, because of their length of service in the party, are the ones up at the top and still pulling the strings, whereas most of the progressive movement, the New Deal wing of the party, the Kennedy Roosevelt wing of the party, happens to be in the lower sections. So do you believe that there is as deep a split in the party as the media would like to brag about on occasion? I don't see it. A split, yeah. Differences, yes. But this civil war, this split, this, we're always on the verge of breaking into 5 different parties. I don't see it. What do you see in your practical day-to-day operations?
I think it's a fake binary that works well when you're in Queens and you have to fight with Nancy Pelosi, who's from San Francisco. But it leaves out so many communities like ours that it creates a real conversation that isn't realistic for us, right? So people in New York City will ask me, am I progressive or am I moderate? I say I am from Chemung County and I like guns and single payer, right? We can't just fit into a box, right? Just like people would say to me, how did a Peruvian American immigrant get into rural organizing? That they can't conceive that of us outside of like this like idea of their idea of politics, right? So we like to do what we call breaking down barriers, right? And we like to break down barriers between urban and rural communities. And how we do that is, I think I told you my story the other day, where I would go to every single Democratic organization in New York City, Brooklyn Young Democrats, LGBT Stonewall Democratic Club of New York City, different groups, right? And I would talk to them. And I would talk to them about rural organizing, and I'd actually give them an experience by letting them phone bank into these races in upstate New York. And so the one thing that we're working on now is trying to do like a sister district kind of situation, where we pair up different Democratic organizations and clubs who are willing to be part of this conversation in helping to elect local candidates in these areas, right? And just by the way, it's not so much as like we have like a fight with like a lot of the establishment, because I'll tell you something, there are like really great county chairs that, and there are some really great county chairs that have like really helped us out and stuff, but like, it's a problem, it's a problem that it's not like that around. It's a problem that there's no like set of ethics or standards. And, we create a situation where like, some of these county Democratic parties have been turned into social clubs, and they should be more than that. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I'll give you an example, right? Because this dysfunction also affects the Republican Party, and they're worse than we are. Right. When I was a rural caucus chair for Young Dems, we organized 34 chapters to Young Democrats across upstate New York, county-wide chapters, right? We got 10 people per county, and then we set them on creating a situation where we asked them to run for someone for office. All right, cool. You got your village trustee. We're going to set you up with this person who's going to help you do calls into that race, right? In March, in the middle, like an off year race, right?
Right.
And,
we're
sometimes
in the midst of that now here. The sadly, our off year, what would be deemed an off year or odd year elections. We have judicial races here. There are county races across the Commonwealth, but sadly, we'll be lucky if 30% of the eligible voters vote, because it's 2021 and not 22 or 24. So I see right where you're coming from that part of it. Yes.
That's why we need
and
to
in fact, if America, the Commonwealth and your state, because you do it too.
Yeah.
I believe there's off-year elections in New Jersey as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Every state has off-year elections, I think.
If we were truly interested in democracy, we would, or expanding democracy or expanding voting, there would not be off-year elections. All of these things would happen in even years when people are more focused, but that's perhaps a topic.
And that's what Republicans in both Pennsylvania and upstate and New York State fear, because I'll tell you what.
That's right why they don't want it. Exactly. Same reason they don't want more mail-in voting and, a day off for voting, or to move election day to a weekend and things and such and such and such. But yeah, we wouldn't, if we were truly interested in voter participation, both parties, the one party remaining in the other corporation, we wouldn't have quote unquote off year elections. Everything would happen in an even year when the focus is already there.
Yeah.
And people are turning out for other reasons.
And I've heard pushback on that. Like, people are like, well, it would create situations with Board of Elections, they would make their job harder for the week. And I was like, okay, so figure a way to consolidate funding to help them be able to do this. But also, we need to reform things like, I'm sure you heard about what happened here, right? With the congressional race in the 22nd district that literally got decided by 100 votes.
Yes.
And because of Board of Elections in Oneida County, that's actually, and this is interesting, by the way, Jeff, the Republican county executive hated this woman who ran for Congress so much, the Republican woman. This is somebody who would have an AR-15 in front of her office, in a case. Claudia Tenney, by the way. Hated her so much that the Republican county executive of Oneida County said the Department of Justice and the state attorney general need to intervene and investigate this Board of Elections, because that Board of Elections didn't realize that they disenfranchised 2,500 people by not registering them to vote correctly. And so their votes didn't count. And had those 2,500 people been allowed to vote and their votes counted, we'd have another Democratic congressman in that area. But because of the dysfunction of the party, setting up people to be commissioners who, there's no real rules around it, there's no real timeline for that, we get these situations, right? So yeah, I'll tell you right now, I think the Republicans in your state and my state are kind of scared, and I'll tell you why. Jeff, regardless of what happens with your state house, I think that they're perilously having to fight harder and harder every year to keep their majority. I think the real, I'm going to say kicking. You're in a situation where they need to get Democratic support to keep their majority. And that John Utachak fellow, who's a senator who became an independent, that's a perfect example of what happened here when we had 5 or 6.
That's a whole different story.
Yeah, no,
that's
but
not the story that it looks like on the surface.
What happened in New York State, though, is we had 5 or 6 Democratic state senators from districts that Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden won by 90%, by the way, end up caucusing with the Republicans. And Cuomo supported it. And that was the history for the last 10 years until 2018 when Democrats took back power, right? So I think that they're fighting harder and harder. I see it here. I also see it in northern PA, where they're afraid that places like Williamsport are electing black Democratic mayors. That's scary to them, right? I was talking to a school board member from that area, and there was they're trying to lock down and do a lot of different things. And, if they're afraid of people running for borough board, and they're afraid of people running for mayor and stuff like that, there's something going on, right? The kick in the ass is we really need to be able to kind of show people that you can run for office, number one. Number two, you can win. And number three, the big scary incumbent isn't scary at all. Some of them are on oxygen. Some of them can't canvass, right? So, yeah.
So we've talked about, let's say this. It's 7:30, folks. 7:30. We'll go... we usually go to at least 8 o'clock if Paolo decides he's going to pass out. is the one guy who's talking more than me. That's an achievement. Lucky you. You win an award. Because I usually can't shut up. That's why I do radio.
Yeah, sorry, Jeff.
Also a face made for radio. Let's just be honest about that. It's 7:30 here in the East Coast. That other side of information is the Facebook page. Come join the live chat. It's been a very, very quiet chat tonight. Lots of people have been in and been through. Haven't seen really any questions or comments so far, other than someone correcting me earlier before you came on, which we always appreciate. We like to be accurate. Tweet us at that Kennedy Talk, that other side of information on Twitter. You can email the program, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. And of course, the bane of my existence, the white whale that I chase feverishly, phone calls. The phone line is open, 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. So as we've talked about, not just tonight, but we had I was lucky, and you were very kind with your time the other night when we did prep for the program, and I was able to explain to you how the program works. I do bury so much of my mess. Well, you know what? Let me just ask it this way. We talked about the thing that Tom Hartman was speaking of, that when we are told as members of the Democratic Party, especially by self-identified Republicans and members of the corporate machine part of the Republicans, you need to start listening to people in rural areas. And Tom Hartman has told us, and his opinion is that no, we need to talk to them and remind them of everything that the Democratic Party has done for them. Where do you fall?
I think I do two things, right? So I think that the idea that we need to listen to rural voters are people like us too, right? So the dynamic of what the Democratic Party sometimes thinks about as like rural organizing and rural work is thinking that we need to talk to, the demographic idea of what rural America is, which is really just built by consultants in Manhattan to kind of extend like a conversation that isn't realistic, right? Number two, in terms of like talking to rural voters, I think that we need to do investment in educational efforts, and not educational efforts in the sense of like, people should go to college, because that's very like, problematic and stuff, but educational efforts in terms of like being able to show people that like, there are leadership opportunities for folks to be able to do internships. I think every county Democratic Party should, in rural areas, should establish an internship program, right? Get some kids involved, right? We should be able to establish fellowships. Some of these parties are sitting on $8,000 to $10,000, right? They get banned from the state party, not banned, but banned from the state party. And, they got their one fundraiser in the summer and that's it, Paolo, we're done, right? No. There's a way to make sure that folks keep staying involved and stuff. And, if we are going to have a situation where we need to talk about institutional investment, when we talk about people and we talk about the things that matter, we need to be able to put up a fight, right? And that especially...
Let me ask you that. When you talk about investments, people tend to generally automatically immediately think about financial investment, not just like Wall Street investment. And I know that you are talking a bit about financial investment, but when you say investment, this large term, what are you talking about? Sounds a very snarky way for me to ask that. I didn't mean that, but define that for me. Define that for folks. If folks are out there listening in rural areas, and I'm very fortunate, thank goodness, that the program reaches a lot of rural areas throughout the country. When you say investment, what do you mean by investment? Are you talking time, education, or is it repetition of what you had just explained? Is it money, time, education, learning your history, learning just simply how to fill out a petition properly? What investment are you talking about?
So there needs to be an inspirational charge, right? And we need to be able to connect with each other as rural Democrats and understand that we need to take up space, right? So this is why we founded Outrun, right? And you can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/Outrun Coalition. And
Folks, the Facebook link for the Outrun page is in the chat and on the page, and I will post it on the page. It'll be you'll be able to see it on the program.
So we understand, that there is like going to be a space that the party cannot do everything, right? And yeah, there are structural issues, but we're here to fix problems, right? And make sure that folks understand, right? So, but what we mean by investment is it's not just, give $150,000 to a county Democratic Party and then let them do what they wish. That is not accountable, and it doesn't really help when you can't find people to run for office, right? Investment is connecting folks to third party organizations that are asking for candidates to do this, because that's the other side of this equation, Jeff. There are groups like Arena, like us, that are asking for folks to be able to access our resources, because we are literally built to help working class people do this work. And by the way, I don't take a salary from this. None of my colleagues take a salary from this. Our trainings are free. We're trying to identify a problem and make sure that people understand it, right? So investment is making sure that there's time for trainings and that there's time to actually have a strategic investment conversation about each county. And these conversations also lead to something that's very interesting. You see the dynamics of where folks want to move forward and who is not willing to, right? You know what I mean? But that's a good thing, because we create a space where I'll give you an example. Somebody had told me that they had never thought that institutional racism was a thing in the Democratic Party until we started talking about Black women being able to run for mayors in small towns, and Black women specifically not being targeted to run for mayors of like rural communities and stuff like that, right? And they had never thought that the party never created a situation, but there had always been an uneasiness on being able to talk about that, and there still is an uneasiness.
What about perhaps a couple of what I'm hoping to do is further illustrate your point. The much more nationally recognized examples of that bias, AOC and Jamal Bowman,
Stacey Abrams, and then the folks who were able to
AOC, you can't run against
Joe Crowley,
very, very wealthy, powerful white Joe Crowley. You can't do that. Jamal Bowman, you can't run against very wealthy white Elliot Engel just because he's been there for 900,000 years. You can't do that. Perhaps a couple of examples for folks. I mean, just about everybody across the country and around the world know who Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is at this point, but that she faced that. Yeah. And she faced the backlash of it in its last election when 13 challengers ran against her in a primary, many of which were backed by the party establishment.
Yeah, but I mean, I would argue this.
Right? We've had it here in the Commonwealth. We have, representatives like Sarah Innamorato and senators like Katie Muth are like, nope. The party put up primary opposition to them. And
that's where I think we like to try to create a real trend, right? Like, your politics are your politics, but we believe in the idea that if you deny LGBTQ plus people, I have friends who got elected to office as LGBT. If you ever utter the words, you don't have experience, and we see a pattern of somebody doing that to people of color or women or anything like that, we immediately tell our candidates, don't work with that person, because that person is not interested in actually making things move forward. And that's a real conversation that we need to have. And I'll tell you why. Because for too long, we burn out in making sure that we think that the structure works. And I'm tired of people doing that. And I want people to set their boundaries for their own mental health, right? I've been a victim of, and I wouldn't call myself a victim, but I've suffered from issues of being able to set boundaries with, people who really didn't care about our communities, right? People who really just thought that places like where we're from couldn't elect Democrats, and we proved them wrong, right? And I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of that because I can call 6 of my friends state senators now. And at any moment, they'll be willing to go stand up to the governor. They're the people who are actually right now telling, that we need to repeal the governor's executive powers because of, the stuff that he did around COVID and stuff. That would not happen unless we take up space, right? And so in order for us to take up space, we have to be very strong, and then we have to realize that we are going to face these oppositions and that there are going to be people who oppose us. And I've had people oppose me from the far left too. DSA doesn't, a lot of Brooklyn DSA doesn't like me. A lot of folks in the progressive groups don't like me. Why? because we have really good ethics. I will not work with people who have allegations of sexual harassment or anything like that. We will not work with people who are willing to talk about conspiracy theories. We really believe that in towns where child poverty is a problem, we want to talk about those issues. We don't want to talk about conspiracy theories or all of these things. We believe that in communities where fracking is a problem, that's a bigger issue than 5G. And if we can educate that to people and we can actually get them to understand that we are here and we are creating a safe space to people to talk about trauma and the generational trauma that our communities have suffered, especially, I like to say this. Before Donald Trump engaged in child separation, that's already been happening in places like rural Pennsylvania and upstate New York. Families have been splitting apart because of the lack of jobs. Right. And the lack of assistance that's happening in West Virginia. And we can talk about this. And this is something that we need to run on because it's something that helps us realize who we are. So, my advice to candidates and whoever wants to run is, follow us. We are here to provide a space and make sure that we can have a real conversation and we'll help you win. And we're not here to, we're here to cut the tape. We're here to cut the red tape and mobilize people.
I almost asked you, I started to ask you before, and every now and then the old gray matter kicks in and I found a better way to phrase the question. But let me go back to a question I wanted to ask you previously.
Sure.
From our conversations, even though there's only been a few of them, they've been lengthy and they've been very detailed, and I'm very fortunate and I appreciate it very much. I very much look forward to the opportunity, if I don't formally join your company, to at least work with it and continue to be we'd
love to do an outrun
and continue to be a source. But that said, that I'm a very, we do nothing but facts here. I of course speculate and give you my opinion, but that's, we do facts here. We do science, we do data, we do truth, we do history. How much, and we've talked actually a lot about how much history means to our party, and that we are a party of history. It's the history of our party that should be ruling our party, not the recent history, but the deep history. How much of that do you do? I mean, I've actually, and it's been shocking to me, to be honest. I mean, I've come across Democratic candidates because I don't deal with Republican candidates because, sadly, most of the time they just won't listen. But how many Democratic candidates they can't take you back to Jefferson and Madison. They don't remember that the New Deal was a democratic policy and solution, not just policy, but a solution. So there's lots of policies. There's not always a lot of solutions, and they simply don't know their own history. And it's been my contention, and you and I talked about this, I think, when we spoke Thursday. The answers to so many of the issues, the problems that we have in this country currently, those answers are in our own past. Now, I know that a lot of candidates can't exactly go up behind the lectern or go up on the soapbox in the stage and say, folks, we need to march back to the past. It's just not a winning campaign formula. But because people always like to talk about the future. What are you going to do for us in the future? How are we going to move forward? But the answers to so much of what's facing this nation, they're in our own past. Whether it's reconstructing our tariff and import system, whether it's ending these subsidies for corporations that they never used to be part of federal government, whether it's listening to Eisenhower's warning about the military-industrial complex, whether it is making the government the employer of last resort, restoring a 91% marginal top tax rate, a 35% corporate tax rate, a 35% capital gains tax rate, actually reestablishing, re-employing, I would normally say manning, but you know what I'm talking about, restaffing the IRS so that not just the poorest people in the country get audited, but the ones who deserve it. Senator Sanders has shown that if you just simply fully staffed the IRS, it could mean almost $100 billion to the government in new funds every single year for rich people who simply don't pay, and the IRS doesn't have the staffing time or lawyers to take them on. So how much of what you do in your education, not just to the public, because God knows that's the job of every candidate, but to the candidate themselves or the party itself sometimes, to say, no, this is who we are. We did that.
So, can I jump in? Or hello?
One of my favorite rants is that the Gregorian calendar is, yeah. Oh, did I lose you there for a sec?
Yeah, for a second. Sorry.
Okay. Hi. One of my favorite rants is that the Gregorian calendar, one of the great things about it is that it's sequential. So it's 2021. That presupposes that there was a 2020, which presupposes there was a 2019.
Yeah.
There was a 1980, but that presupposes that there was a 1979.
Exactly.
And a 78 and a 1933 and 32. The answers are right there. We need only the courage to implement them. How much of your day-to-day, or when you sit down with a candidate and said, do you even, maybe on the chance that you get approached by the barista to say, I know who you are and I want to run.
Yeah, that happens a lot too.
Do you have to then say to them, okay, awesome. What do you stand for? What do you know about our party? What do you know about history? What do you know about policy? And they say, what? How much of what you do is part of that? It's not just the educating of the electorate at large, because we know that sadly, the majority of the electorate is not educated on these things. What about your candidate education, your candidate development, which is what I do inside Blue Collective, is candidate development. How much candidate development do you feel that you do or that you have to do?
I'd say that a good, and I'm busy, Jeff. I only have so much time that I can declare to these conversations, right? And so for me, candidate development is, I guess I'd like to share another story if that's fine. Right?
Absolutely.
I got approached by a former county legislator here who was like, we need to get young people to run for office, right? And I told him, hold your horses. I'm not a repository of young people, and you can't just, click your finger and say, do this for me, right? We're not there to kind of like understand the notion of, we deserve respect, right? And so for me, it's knowing that people need to understand that they deserve respect for running for office, right? And that to me is like a bigger thing than people think, because you know what? Any old schmo can say, oh, politics is dirty and stuff. It takes guts to run for office. It really does, right? It takes guts to put yourself out there, and takes guts to be able to do it. I can personally do that because I help people do this. And I've been doing this since I was 16.
No, it takes guts to go from private citizen to public figure.
Yeah. And so,
it does.
you're going to get your punches from that, right? But what I think is that what you are able to achieve in being able to do that is so much more than being able to just sit there and not do anything, right? And for me, candidate development, I've had some frustrating moments where I've had to deal with people who don't want to do their things. And so, I can't help everyone. And some people end up burning out and not being able to run for office, right? Give you an example. Here, we had a Democratic minority leader for county legislature, former Republican. Didn't really know that, you have to be able to say more than I just want to be bipartisan, right? And burned out, switched parties to independent. Didn't want to listen. And it led to a situation where, you would go on her social media, and her social media was such a bubble that she thought that bipartisanship, her idea of bipartisanship was allowing anyone to enter her commentary and allowing anyone to criticize her. And so I gave her this view of the county that was people who didn't know who their county legislators were commenting on her page because she was the most accessible. And then people were finding out that they lived in another district where the county legislator wasn't even doing anything on social media or anything like that. And so that was, very, very proving in that, she was allowing conspiracy theories. She was allowing people to talk about, I remember I had to get her to block someone who was being openly anti-Semitic on her page because she thought that that's what bipartisanship, she thought that that's what being open was, that was the job of an elected official. And that's not. It's leadership, and it's being able to kind of like mobilize people and have the values to be able to stand up to these things, right? And so I use that as an example to tell my candidates, listen to the folks around you, ask for help. We all don't know everything. And so, when we talk about history and stuff, I think that the history that we make of our party, yeah, we have the history of the progressive wing of the party and stuff. And I would even include Bob Lafayette and, other former, back when the Republican Party had some sanity in it in the 1920s and stuff, Bob Lafayette in Wisconsin. I would even include people like that in that conversation, right? Have the ability, have an ego, but also have the ability to understand that we are not only, reliant on our history and that we have to go to the past, but that sometimes we need to be able to make history on our own. And that we need to be able to, blaze forward. I used to look at myself as like this guy who was like, kind of like a party boss and like was able to do a lot of things and held power in the party, right? It took me a while to realize that I was like the first Hispanic person to do this job within the party, or that, that I was the first Peruvian American party official, I think, in any political party, in any state political party in New York, in any state Democratic Party in the country, right? That I was a person of color doing a lot of work that white people who are scared of these areas won't do because they believe in stereotypes and I don't. And if we don't believe in stereotypes, that person running for office can show them that by overcoming adversity and show them the things that have worked in the past to develop these communities, we can bring them back to what they should be. Right. And so that's my message in terms of education. We try to instill leadership and instill like a notion of like setting boundaries and understanding our history as a progressive party, and where, Jeff, I think you agree with me. Black women, young people, LGBTQ plus folks, right? Progressive folks should have the ability to run for office and take positions of power. Yep. Right.
It's the women of color specifically vote.
Yeah.
If you want to distill that down to black women vote, which you can make an excellent case for that.
Yeah.
If not an overwhelming case.
Yeah.
Have saved the bacon of the Democratic Party in how many elections, especially recently?
Doug Jones. Doug Jones would not have been in the Senate.
They've been.
I'm sorry. Hello?
Georgia.
Yeah.
Our Senate candidates in Georgia, Biden himself.
Yeah.
They've saved the bacon of the Democratic Party more than should be necessary, but have done so repeatedly.
Yeah.
I think it's because they understand what their own self-interests are.
And so that's the other thing that I think is interesting, right? Is that, so when I do this work, all right, and I bring like, and I'm told that I can't do this work because I'm a person of color, right? And I'm told that I would not be effective at this work, but we show them that we are. The last thing we need to do, Jeff, as progressives and as rural working class people, and rural Democrats, we don't need to seek validation from people who don't understand our communities, because people who only know Aspen, Los Angeles, and Chicago and New York will never understand this. And that our issues matter, and what our power is pulling together and building a political movement that meets a machine, to quote AOC. So that's what I would say. I hope that answers that question.
Let me ask you a bit of insider as we're coming up on 8 o'clock, and I'm going to let you go.
Oh, thank you.
Because you have been ridiculous. Oh, don't say it like that. It makes it sound terrible. Let me ask you a bit of an insider baseball question, if I might, since you are in New York. Will there be a senatorial primary for Mr. Schumer?
Your guess is as good as mine. I couldn't tell you.
Oh, come on, Paolo,
No,
you're right there.
I really couldn't tell you. And I tend to, if there is a primary, I want candidates to visit every 62 of New York's counties, and I want the candidate to be able to do to bring in the spirit.
Let me ask you in a different way, because we all know what the rumors are about who's going to do that. Can Representative Ocasio-Cortez win a Democratic primary in the state of New York?
Is she actually
against Senator Schumer? Because she wouldn't be running against,
Gillibrand.
I would say her chances against Senator Gillibrand would be better, but can she win a Democratic primary against Senator Schumer?
I just don't know. It would really have to be how her campaigns run, and what's done, right? If it's the problem with the progressive machinery in New York State, that the groups that are like, the left groups that like help do the progressive politics and stuff. John Fetterman was able to get himself into a position. I don't know what you think about Mr. Fetterman. I think he's fascinating, right? But I consider him to be a progressive guy. The fact that he was able to get elected statewide in a red state proves a lot about progressivism that actually works, right?
And will be running for the United States Senate, by the way.
Yeah, which is exciting.
It'll be an interesting, that's going to be 2022 in the Commonwealth. It's going to be absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. Anyways, you have like a network where like I realized this, Jeff, in that call that I was on with you. You have people from Philadelphia, you have people from across the state that were actually connecting, right? Here, it's kind of interesting. It's not the same. Like the progressive organizations, number one, they're not as like well developed in terms of like being able to do multi-county efforts and stuff. So like they can do things in New York City or Buffalo or Rochester, but in a statewide race, they tend to leave out a lot of the vote in communities like mine, because let's be honest, some progressives also perpetuate the stereotype of rural equals white, rural can't be won.
And rural equals red, and there's no use spending money in there, and so on and so on. Right.
And they do it in Democratic primaries. And so guess what happens? You don't come to my county, you're not going to tell me what you're going to do for us, right? Why would I vote for you? Right? And so if there's a way to challenge that, we'll see. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Maybe.
Well, it's going to be interesting. I mean, the 2022 in the Commonwealth is going to be fascinating because there will be more legislative races. You have governor, lieutenant governor, and a United States Senate seat up. So it is going to, in addition to, I'm sure countless local races that I don't even know about, I'm not taking into account and that I'm not remembering, to be blunt. But yeah, it's going to be it's going to kick off here. It's going to be a hell of a year.
Yeah, and we're excited.
And the 2022 race has already begun, by the way. I mean, you're already starting to see, folks emerge. So yeah, I had to ask you that little inside baseball question there because you're on the ground. But listen, I have kept you entirely too long. I'm sure you want to go have dinner or fall asleep or not talk for a few minutes, or just maybe not think about politics for a few minutes and enjoy the remainder of Valentine's Day with your better half. I always refer to mine as the better half. So I will say a million thank yous to you. You have been exceptionally kind, open, forthright with your time, with your answers, with your advice. Before I let you go, let me do what I traditionally do with every guest, and that is, for the next few minutes or as long as it takes you, if there's any points, questions, lines of thought that perhaps I didn't allow you to finish, or anything else that you wanted to get out there into the ether to the audience, and then all of the ways that you can be followed, whatever contact information that you would like to share with the audience. So again, any possible answers to questions that I might have cut you off because I had a stream of consciousness, or any points that you wanted to make sure that you made, and any contact info that you would like to share with the audience.
Sure. So folks can follow me on Twitter. We have to still launch our Twitter, our Instagram, and our website for Outrun. We're only 2 months old, and we've been really concentrated on capacity building for these trainings. Right. Our next event is on the 17th. We're going to be speaking to Texas Democrats in the 1st Congressional District, Louis Gohmert's seat. If folks are interested, I can send you the link. So we're going to, if you folks want to see this, finally, you can reach us at facebook.com/Outrun Coalition. Please like our social media. We're trying to launch. We actually launched that like a few weeks ago, so it's not that recent. You know, people will tell you that you can't do it until you do it, and when you do it, you win. And so, never give up, and we will be here to make sure that we can work with y'all and run for office. We'd also love to do one in Northampton County, if you're interested. So
you said you were doing 2 in the Commonwealth already. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm assuming Lycoming and where?
Lycoming County and then Lancaster County.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice, Lancaster.
Yeah,
it's becoming highly gentrified Lancaster. Yeah.
There's a lot of folks moving there from Philadelphia.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. They've done the PA form of gentrification. Yeah, they're moving out of Philadelphia, going to Lancaster. They've taken the old factories, made them into cool loft industrial spaces, and then the cost of living in Lancaster has skyrocketed.
I imagine.
It just is what it is. But listen, I can't thank you enough for being here, and I mean that with all sincerity. You've done me a favor. You've done our audience a favor. We've engaged them and educated them tonight, and I'm eternally grateful. And the only thing that you are bound to now is that you are part of the Kennedy Effect family. Let this not be the only time that you come and talk to us. The door is always open to you.
Yeah, Jeff, I will, maybe after this November, I can bring you some more local elected officials.
That's good.
Yeah.
And don't forget us over at Our Revolution too. You know how to find us there. The door is open to you there as well.
Yeah. I definitely have to go eat dinner though, because
no, you can. I'm not talking about right this second. I'm just you know what I mean. But the door's open to you here and at our Rev. You're part of the Kennedy Effect family. We don't like to have just one-time guests. The door's open. We want to see you again.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for your audience, and thank you for you.
Thanks, Paolo. Great. Thanks so much for being here.
Great. Have a good night. All right.
Have a great rest of your night.
Bye.
So that is Paolo Cremidis. Listen, if you're the Democratic Party, to be quite honest, if you're any party, that's the Democratic, the Republican Corporation, through Libertarians to the Greens to the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you cannot cede, C-E-D-E, I think is, or C-E-E-D. Yeah, well, misspelling. You cannot concede or cede large swaths of territory anywhere. It is a political party's job to speak to every voter, wherever they may be, no matter how rural the area is. And we have to remember that when we look through history, these areas that we're talking about here, that Paolo and I just spoke about, are areas that were traditionally Democratic areas because folks understood what the New Deal was able to do for them. And we have the Democratic Party moved away from that in the 90s. And even as our party moves back to that, and it is not fast enough for me, but it is moving back to that. You can see it with the Green New Deal, with President Biden's essentially what is the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps. I don't believe he's calling it that, but it is essentially that. The Green New Deal, the talk by Andrew Yang, who is currently the leading candidate to be the mayor of New York, about a universal basic income, the policy initiatives by the Democrats in the House to for election security, to expand voter access, by Speaker Pelosi to tax incentivize the on-shoring of jobs, not the off-shoring of jobs. The principles of the New Deal are what the Democratic Party is based on. Fundamental fairness, the preamble to the Constitution. It's what we are based on. And I do believe that the party, to a great extent, is finding its way back to all that. And that's a damn good thing. So that's what I'm very, very honored that Paolo would spend so much time with us tonight. It is 8:10 Eastern Time here in the United States. I will hang with you just for a few more minutes. I want to leave the phone line open for just a few minutes and give you the opportunity to join the program. The chat tonight has seen an awful lot of people filter through, but no questions and comments. I just don't know if Paolo and I were that engaging that you didn't even have time to type a question or a comment, or whether I just bored the sin out of you, because I know Paolo didn't. Not sure. Don't see any tweets. That's not a surprise, to be blunt. We don't get a lot on Twitter. We gained a follower, though. That's awesome. We always appreciate that. I would just remind you again, please, wherever you find us in the Kennedy Effect universe, come to the Facebook page, ask to be a member, go to the YouTube channel, subscribe, go to Patreon, and consider your financial support that we will turn back into this program to make it even better. Give us a follow on Twitter. We're on Tick-Tock now. I finally got onto Tick-Tock. We'll be doing short little videos over there, program reminders, and so on. Join us, be part of the Kennedy Effect world, ether out there. Give us a like, give us a follow, give us a subscribe, go to Patreon, give it a look. And if you fancy it, then have at it. But be a part of it. If you're a regular Hot101.net listener, tell us, call, when you can call the program, tell us you're listening on Hot101.net. Drop us on the Hot101.net Facebook page where you see the program posted, and tell us where you're listening from. Tell us how you listen. Are you on your phone? Do you stream the phone through the car or truck while you're driving? Are you on a smart speaker in the kitchen while you're making dinner? Let us know how you're taking in the program, whether you enjoy it, you don't enjoy it, do you have questions? Be a part of the program. So there's just one thing that I want to get to. And again, the phone line remains open, 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. Very sad thing happened. I got a bit of sad news right before I came on the air. One of our past guests is Judge Carolyn Nichols, and she was running a campaign for the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Supreme Court, the highest court in the Commonwealth. Judge Nichols is the only judge of color at the Superior Court level or higher here in the Commonwealth. Last weekend, the Pennsylvania Democratic Party voted to give its endorsement to her opponent. I fought against it. Not because I believe her opponent is a bad human being or a bad judge, but because it is my opinion that unless primary elections can be avoided by having the potential primary candidates sit in a room, lay out their case, and come to an agreement amongst them like adults that, I can't beat you in a primary, so I'm going to save the party this trouble and we're not going to have one. If that can't happen, and I believe there is still room in politics for such things, I actually think those things are highly evolved. They're not backroom, smoky room deals. They're highly evolved. When 2 primary, 3 primary, 5 primary candidates can sit down and say, here's my case, here's my case, here's my case. And the other candidates can look at each other and go, you know what, I can't beat that. And they step back. There's nothing wrong with that. But Judge Nichols has decided not to continue with her campaign after being rejected by our own party. The only judge of color throughout the entire state at the level she currently holds. We have not even gotten to the petition process yet. While I have little doubt, if any, that Judge Nichols' opponent will easily get on the ballot, we have not even gotten to the petition process yet. And yet the party took a stand to reject Judge Nichols. The party hierarchy worked, efforted the chance to push Judge Nichols out of this race. Now, I have also said in this program that I don't believe judges should be elected, period. And I continue to believe that. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the other 8, I think it's 8 or 9 states that elect judicial candidates are all wrong. You should be following the federal model. The executive appoints, the Senate confirms. So there shouldn't be elections for such things, period. That said, what was done to Judge Nichols was dirty. Because some of the big money folks in our Commonwealth put their thumb on the scale and told the party apparatus, you will support this one. Judge Nichols was never given a chance. Her opponent is not a bad human being. Not by any means. She is a qualified judicial candidate. And no, she wasn't my choice. So this is not just sour grapes. It is the fact that this is not what we should be doing as a party. I fought against this endorsement. I will continue to fight against these endorsements going forward because they're wrong. That's why we have primary elections. These things are supposed to be decided by the Democratic electorate in the primary at the polls. So for however many of my fellow members of the Democratic Party, be they on committee or rank and file members who hear this message as I close with you, I beg you to stand up and stop this corruption. We either have primaries or we don't. If the party is just going to put its thumb on the scale and pick who the general election candidates are going to be in such races, then why are we even bothering to feign the ideal that we have a primary? And we told the only judge of color at the Superior Court level or higher, the Democratic Party, the big tent party, the party whose bacon has been saved by voters of color more times than we can count in recent memory. Nah, we don't want you. We want the other one because all the rich guys told us that's what to do. We're supposed to be so much better than that. It's a very disappointing turn of events. And I hope it's one that we don't continue. I can't tell you how much I hope it's one that we don't continue. We're supposed to be so much better than that. Very disappointing news. Not unexpected news, but very disappointing. So for my audience inside the Commonwealth, I hope you will stand up with me and say that this has to stop. Party should stop putting its thumb on the scales and picking who our general election candidates are. We're either going to have primaries or not. If we're going to keep doing this, then cancel the primary elections, choose inside the party, and then we won't bother. We'll see you at the general. But what was done to Judge Nichols is just wrong and dirty. And I hope it stops. And there's a lot of good folks who stood with me against it. There's a lot of people in our party who feel that the process itself, the entire endorsement process itself, is wrong. And it is wrong. It's time that we get loud about it now. It has to stop. It has to stop. Listen, if there was a statewide race open and there were two candidates and one of them was a Republican in Democratic clothing, some wild conspiracy theorist, had a huge long criminal record, then hey, I'm good with the party pushing that out. But when we had two candidates of similar, if not equal qualification, similar, if not equal popularity and respect, then we had no business. And we've damaged a good woman for nothing other than a small handful of people, probably less than I can count on one hand, who control tens of millions of dollars, telling the rest of us who to support. It's wrong. It is undemocratic. Small d and large d. And I suspect that from within my own party, I'll get quite a bit of blowback from this rant. Oh well. I won't be happy about it. I don't want the blowback. I'm a proud member of this party. And I will continue to fight and work inside it. Not fight. I don't want to fight with people. I will continue to work inside of it, effort inside of it, push it back to where it belongs. The policies of Jefferson and Madison and Roosevelt, the New Deal, Kennedy, Johnson, the Great Society, civil rights, voting rights, a fair, truly progressive tax system, a fully funded and operational government. I will continue to fight for all those things inside my party. I know they won't like what I've just said, but that's too bad. That's my opinion. I've got the platform. I'm going to use it. And I hate to end the program on such a sour note, such an inside baseball, power, pulling strings kind of thought, but it is what it is. It happened and it's wrong and it has to stop. We're supposed to be better than that. 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. Try to go 6 more minutes here and give you right to 8:30. We will return to next week. We are planning a live program again and be with you again next week. That would be the 21st. I'm noticing on Facebook that my picture is very jumpy. I wonder why that is. I hope it's not dodgy internet. I paid my internet a lot of money. I hope it's not that. That said, we will return next week with a live program. I do not have the guest lined up yet, although I am in communication with the guest, so I assume we'll get that sorted out. Among the other hats that I wear in my quote-unquote private life, I am a member of the Northampton County Democratic Committee, and a proud one. And even though I might have a disagreement with my party about this endorsement process, I still believe in my party. I just think we need to fix this process. And I will continue to work inside the party to make it better. Among the other hats, I am an operating partner in the Blue Collective Comprehensive Political Consulting Cooperative. That's a very long name, but it is who we are. Very similar, but not exact to what Paolo does in his group. We run campaigns, we develop candidates, we grow candidates, we make candidates better candidates. You can always contact me about that with questions about how and what we do. If we want to see the inside baseball, insider smoky room stuff end, Blue Collective's your group, period. Let me again run you through a couple of new things that we did. I posted on That Other Side of Information on the Facebook page a picture of the bingo card. George and I were able to finish the bingo card. So the bingo card is on That Other Side of Information, our Facebook page. So if you go to That Other Side of Information and scroll down, you will see, if it comes to you chronologically as it should, you will see a picture of a bingo card. That is the Kennedy Effect bingo card. It has reached 35 folks so far on the analytics that I get from Facebook. No likes or comments so far, but the bingo card is there. Print it, screenshot it, whatever you want to do. You can now play the Kennedy Effect bingo every time that we are live on the air. So as I look at the bingo card, let me see how many I did. We did 40 years of Reaganism. We did the Koch network. We mentioned President Kennedy, mentioned the New Deal. I did not mention that we are not a parliamentary system. We did very briefly touch on the destruction of unions. Nothing on trickle down. Nothing on socialism for the rich. Corporations are not people. I think I did say that. The Republican corporation, that's a standard one. That's an automatic. You can get that one all the time now. That's going to be every show. The wealth doctrine we didn't talk about. We did talk about the top 1%. Become a Patreon subscriber. Yep, I mentioned that a lot. Hypocrisy Party didn't get there. Republican Great Depression. Yeah, we did get there. We did do Republican Great Depression. Because let's remember history, folks. Our history tells us that the Great Depression was not always referred to as the Great Depression. It was Republicans themselves that removed their blame from it and rewrote history. It was referred to on a regular, constant basis as the Republican Great Depression. We are now in a second Republican Great Depression. If you are not part of the top 1% and make most of your income from stocks, then you're in a Great Depression. I'm in the bottom 99%. You're damn right I'm in an economic depression. The bottom 99% of this country is in a proper depression. The other OECD countries, the other quote unquote first world countries, are supporting their populations with supplemental pay to stay home during this pandemic. Massive amounts of wealth created and given to the quote unquote common working person, keeping restaurants alive, pubs, bars, businesses, small businesses, folks who have been asked or ordered to stay home have been paid, but not here in this country. Yet again, we are an outlier at odds with the rest of the world. All these other first world countries and some second world countries have paid their populations, kept them afloat, kept their economies moving. We haven't done that. This pandemic has been an excuse for the oligarchs, the Republican corporation, the top 1%, the largest corporations to crush small businesses under their feet. It's been an excuse, and they've taken advantage of it. Hypocrisy Party didn't mention. We've done this before. I did. Green New Deal, I did. Right-wing hate media mentioned it. Citizens United, yep. Hot101.net, always our friends and family. Our Revolution PA, yep. Other Side of Information Media Network, yep. The Democratic Third Way, yep. Voter suppression, yep. And finally, we want your phone calls. If you had bingo, if you played bingo tonight, you did brilliantly. I think you might have got bingo somewhere. Huh. I'd have to look at that and play it. I'd have to actually print it, I think, and play. I don't want to do it that way, though, because I want it to be organic. Like, if somebody actually gets bingo, I want to know. I hope the bingo card takes off, because I think it's a cute, kind of neat little tricky thing. Not tricky, neat, kitschy thing to, get you involved in the program. Anyway, the bingo card is there after long, many promises from George and I finally did the bingo card. Where are we at? 8:31. So it's about time for me, I think, to say goodnight for now. We desperately hope you enjoyed the program. We hope that you will become part of the Kennedy Effect Media Network. Find us on Facebook, That Other Side of Information, the YouTube channel, That Other Side of Information. I believe we are That Other Side of Information on TikTok, and we are on Instagram. You can search for me, Jeff Kennedy, on Facebook and on LinkedIn. There's just so many ways to get a hold of us. Again, That Other Side of Information on Facebook probably continues to be the main outlet. That's where we post a lot of our news stories. Punch the mic. That's a good one. That's a good one. I must be getting tired. Good time to wrap up. But we thank you. We so much thank you for being here. I missed you guys after a week of not being here, and it's great to be back on the air with you. I'm so lucky I'm off tomorrow, so I can stay up a little late. I can go get some dinner and not have to worry about jumping into bed. I'm usually quite wired when I get off these programs. But I'm just so thankful for doing this program. I'm so thankful for having it. I deeply enjoy it. Sometimes it becomes a bit of a slog. I'm like, I can't get a guest. I can't get, how am I going to do all this? But then I sit here and I talk with you. I very much try to not talk at you. I try to talk with you, and we talk to each other. We learn. I see the folks that are watching. I say hello to them. They send comments. They send questions. They send compliments, which is so kind, so very kind. And I know that there are Hot101.net listeners literally around the globe, and it means the world to me. And I thank you so much for doing so and for being with us every week. It means everything. I truly appreciate it. I really, really do appreciate it. I hope you learn from this program. I hope you take a lot away from it. I hope you're glad you've listened. I hope you're glad that you've given us the time that you've given us. And even if you disagree with literally everything I say, I hope you've learned. I hope that maybe through disagreement with me, you've honed your own arguments or made the points that you hold dear make more sense to you. I just hope hope wherever you fall on the spectrum that you enjoy and that you're glad you're part of this program, because we so much enjoy bringing it to you. We really, really do. We believe in what we're doing here. I'm so thankful for my friends, sisters, brothers, friends, and family at Hot101.net for allowing us to be part of the Hot101.net family. We are looking for a television outlet. Think about that. So if you know of a television outlet, a cable access channel that needs programming, or some television outlet that's looking for programming, we're here. We're looking on our side too. So we might be a good fit for someone out there. YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Patreon, the whole TikTok, the whole universe that is the Kennedy Effect. We're so glad you were with us tonight. And as always, let me just remind you, even though the hospitalization numbers, the new case numbers, the infection rates seem to be going down across the board. Also know that the UK and South African variants of the coronavirus are growing exponentially. So even though the total case count, I must be getting tired, even though the total case count is down, the variant numbers are skyrocketing. These are variants that are much, much more transmissible, and in the case of South African, quite potentially more deadly. So please take care of yourselves. There's no one in the world who's more sick of a mask than me, but it is what we have to do to keep each other safe. It's part of being part of a society. We look out for each other. Societies are based on how we protect those who cannot protect themselves and how we protect the least among us. So let's do that. Believe me, I'm sick of a mask too, but it is what we have to do. We will get through this. Eventually, mask times will end, but they have not ended yet. So please remain careful, remain vigilant, keep yourself healthy. Check in on friends and neighbors, especially those of the senior set. Check in on them. Say hello. See if they need groceries, shovel the snow, rake the leaves, cut the grass, wherever you are in the country. Just help out. We are one society. We are one community. The United States is a big, big country with 50 states and protectorates and territories, wide variety of people, but we are still a community and a society. Let's treat each other that way. So for George Dare, for April Riddick, for DJ Lex and DJ Earl at Hot101.net, I am Jeff Kennedy. Thank you very much for being here. And I beg you again, please take care of yourselves and each other. We will return next week, February 21st from 5 p.m. Eastern. We will look forward to seeing you then. Come say hi to me on any of the various platforms all week. We look forward to talking to you and with you. Thank you so much. Please have a great night. Stay safe.